Chapter 15. I can't explain it clearly. Just a feeling. When I returned, I looked into the Wang clan's brother and sister. I heard that their reputation in the capital isn't too good, and they can be considered as one of the profligate scions in the capital. They are lawless and do all sorts of shady things. It's said that not too long ago, they even abducted women. If that's the case, it's one thing. However, that isn't the case from my interactions with them. Also, Your Highness is aware of Wang Gangji's personality. He is a pure soldier and he doesn't know much about politics. Otherwise, he wouldn't have met with Yao Guangyi at this moment. In this matter, I feel that he has been made use of. As for the Wang clan's brother and sister, they seem to understand what Wang Gangji is unable to see through. The incident at the vast crane pavilion seemed to be a provocation to Yao Feng, but I feel that it was directed at their father. Yao Guangyi is known for his scheming. If he were to know that his scheme was seen through by two children, he would probably die in disbelief. Of course, this is only my personal feeling. It's still too early to say the truth. Lu Ting said calmly. The hall was silent. For the first time, a grim expression appeared on the King of Song's face. Even though Lu Ting said that it was his personal guess, the King of Song was too familiar with him. If he didn't have the slightest confidence, he wouldn't have said such words. However, what kind of person was Yao Guangyi? To think that two teenagers would see through this old fox's scheme. How was that possible? The King of Song and the old butler glanced at one another. They could see the deep disbelief in each other's eyes. This was already close to being a monster. Your Highness, it would be fine if that was the case. However, the words that he said, the one who laughs in the end is the one who laughs best, I feel that he was actually saying it to Your Highness. For an outsider to be able to see through matters that even those in the game wouldn't be able to see through, this isn't something that an ordinary intellectual can match up to. Furthermore, he's only 15. Lu Ting sighed. Only then did he reveal the reason why he valued the young man so highly. This child was too young. The King of Song listened and remained silent for a long time. He had to admit that Lu Ting's words had a huge impact on him. The two families of the King of Song were very close, but Duke Zhou's bloodline wasn't the only branch of the Wang family. Moreover, with the identity and status of the King of Song, it was impossible for him to keep paying attention to a few teenagers. But if these children were as capable as Lu Ting said, then the King of Song couldn't take them lightly. Lord Lu's consciousness wants me to meet this Wang clan brat? After a long time, the King of Song raised his head and said. He had originally summoned Lu Ting to ask about Wang Yan, but now this was no longer important. Without a doubt, Lu Ting was also inclined to believe that Wang Yan was innocent in this matter. There's no need for that. Unexpectedly, Lu Ting waved his hand and denied it. Your Highness, have you forgotten that it will be Duke Zhou's 70th birthday soon? At that time, all the descendants of the Wang clan would go there together. It wouldn't be too late for Your Highness to go and meet him at that time. After all of this is just my conjecture, and the truth is still unknown. That's fine. The King of Song smiled and didn't object. It's rare for Lord Lu to think so highly of the third son of the Wang clan. Furthermore, just based on the phrase the one who laughs last is the best, I have to reward him. Butler Zheng, go pick something from the treasury and send it to Wang Yan's residence. Yes, this old servant understands. The old butler bowed and said respectfully. Wait a moment. The King of Song seemed to have thought of something and hesitated for a moment. It's getting late. Let's send it over tomorrow. Lu Ting saw the sinister look in the King of Song's eyes and sighed. He knew that the King of Song still didn't completely trust Wang Yan. But this time Lu Ting didn't say anything. As the saying goes, a long journey reveals a horse's stamina, and time reveals a person's life. Whether or not Wang Yan had betrayed the Wang clan, whether or not the Wang clan had colluded with King Qi, and what had happened on the Crane Pavilion, all of this would come to light with the passing of time. As for Bao Xian and Zheng Yuan, I treated them well, but they plotted against me at this time and betrayed me to side with King Qi. Such ungrateful people, if I don't punish them, I won't be able to vent my anger. I can't deal with King Qi, but can't I deal with Bao Xian and Zheng Yuan? Aren't Lingnan and Ma Bei lacking a few scholars? Let him spend the rest of his life there. The King of Song's eyes turned sinister as he spoke. The struggle in the imperial court was fraught with danger. treading on thin ice and deciding life and death with a single word. These were not just empty words. Although the King of Song was currently deserted, he wasn't at the point where he was a tiger that had fallen from grace. If a tiger didn't show its might, it would be treated as a sick cat. In the past he was too benevolent, which was why he was betrayed by so many people. But now the King of Song didn't want to put up with it anymore. Swish, swish, swish. Picking up his brush, the King of Song hurriedly wrote a memorial to the throne. No one knew that the future of Baoxian and Zhengyuan had been decided in just a few strokes. But this time, whether it was the old butler or Lu Ting, no one said anything. Even King Qi wouldn't be able to do anything, let alone fight with the King of Song for the sake of Baoxian and Zhengyuan. This was the bloody politics of the imperial court. The carriage rumbled. Wang Chong didn't know what had happened in the King of Song's residence and didn't care about it. Sitting in the carriage on his way back, Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil as he began to think about other things. He had done what he needed to do for his father. Not long after, when Yao Guangyi led his troops and appeared in his father's territory, the truth would be revealed. Next, it was time for him to carry out the second step of his plan. A just cause enjoys abundant support while an unjust cause finds little support. The incident at the vast crane pavilion had clearly illustrated this point. His little sister was born with incredible strength, but when she met with Yao Feng and a bunch of thugs from the Yao residence, she couldn't help but be flustered. His previous life's experience had also illustrated this point. If not for his lack of troops, he wouldn't have ended up in such a state. If he wanted to fulfill his wish and change the fate of the Wang clan and the Tang dynasty, he had to be like Yao Feng and gather his own forces. Only with great strength and many followers would he be able to change this perilous empire. But to achieve all of this, he had to possess immense wealth, wealth that could rival a country. Money makes the world go round. The more talented a person was, the more rebellious he would be. Without sufficient benefits, who would be willing to serve another? Needless to say, he was only a 15-year-old child. Just that, where could he find such immense wealth? Seated in the carriage, Wang Chong frowned deeply. The Wang clan wasn't a wealthy clan, and they didn't have any assets that could allow them to make a fortune. In this aspect, he couldn't rely on his clan at all. Wang Chong could only think of a way himself. There must be a way, there must be a way. Tapping his finger lightly, Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil as he carefully went through the events of his previous life. Without any means to make a fortune, he could only think of ways to earn money. It was fortunate that Wang Chong had the memories of his previous life, and he had an advantage in this aspect. I got it. Suddenly, Wang Chong's eyes lit up as he recalled something. Wuxia steel. Right, Wuxia steel. His originally gloomy mood was swept away, and Wang Chong's mood suddenly became relaxed. Wood steel is a type of precious patterned steel. When a saber or sword is forged, the patterns on its surface will flow naturally, creating a beautiful sight to behold. At the same time, wood steel is the best material for forging weapons, second to none. In the parallel universe that Wang Chong came from, Wuxia steel had another name, Persian knife, or Damascus scimitar. Weapons forged from this material were ranked first among the 3 most famous swords in the world since ancient times. More importantly, the reserve of Wuxia steel was very limited. Once it was dug out, it would be gone forever. In the future, a real Damascus scimitar could be sold for millions, even tens of millions of US dollars. And it was priceless. In this world, the same was true for Wuxia steel. The reason why Wang Chong remembered this kind of steel was not because of its preciousness, but because of its sharpness. Weapons forged from Wuxia steel were extremely sharp. They could easily tear and break those extremely precious famous swords and sabers. In terms of sharpness, weapons forged from Wuxia steel were the sharpest, second to none. In the parallel universe that Wang Chong came from, scientists had conducted experiments and found that the blades of Wuxia steel weapons had countless nano-level sawteeth of various sizes that were hard to see with the naked eye. These numerous tiny sawteeth together formed the legend of the unparalleled sharpness of Wuxia steel. Cavalry equipped with Wuxia steel weapons could easily cut their opponents into pieces together with their armor. The death was extremely tragic. The tiny sawteeth on the blades of Wuxia steel could easily tear open the opponent's wounds and cause massive bleeding. A large amount of blood would be lost in a short period of time, and the bleeding could not be effectively stopped. Many of the minor injuries had turned into serious injuries because of this. With all these reasons added together, an army equipped with Wuxia steel weapons would possess terrifying destructive power that would cause people to pale at the mere mention of it. And their opponents would usually suffer heavy casualties. However, even though Wuxia steel was so rare, Wang Chong knew that this was the time when it was the least valuable. If there were no accidents, this was the time when the first batch of Wuxia steel would be excavated from the only source in this world, the Hyderabad Mountains. This first batch of Wuxia steel from Hyderabad was being transported by Sindhi monks to various parts of the world. The Abbasid Caliphate, the Western regions, the Tang dynasty, the Turkic Khaganate, the Silla Empire. Sindhu is also known as India or India. However, when it was first introduced to China, it was called Sindhu. It was named by Emperor Wu of the Western Han dynasty. It would take another year before the reputation of these rare Wuxia steel would start to show, and another 10 years before it would truly become famous in the world. And it would take another 20 years for the perfect Hyderabad method to forge Wuxia steel to appear. And finally, in less than 30 years, the last piece of ore in the Hyderabad mountains would be excavated. That was the last piece of Wuxia steel in Hyderabad, and the last piece in the world. This was the current situation of Wuxia steel. This ore wasn't limitless, it was extremely rare and limited. But at this moment no one in this world knew about it. Wang Chong carefully recalled the memories in his mind. Calculating the time, these two monks should have already arrived at the Tang dynasty. The people of the Tang dynasty rarely paid attention to people outside of the western regions. At the moment, no one would notice the two strange-looking Sindhi monks, needless to say, the wood steel they were wearing. If he were to find them at this moment, he might be able to make an unexpected fortune. Thinking of this, Wang Chong's heart couldn't help but pound. Even though they were in different time and space, Wang Chong knew that weapons forged from Wuxia steel were also something that countless empires' generals, nobles, celebrities and martial arts experts yearned for. The gorgeous design of Wuxia steel weapons could serve as a foil to the status of the nobles, and to a martial arts expert, a weapon made from Wuxia steel could greatly increase their strength. For these rare Wuxia steel weapons, these people were willing to go bankrupt and pay with everything they had. If he could obtain the Wuxia steel from the two Sindhi monks, the benefits he would receive in the future could be imagined. Thinking of this, Wang Chong couldn't hold back anymore. "Little sister, are you interested in going out with me to find a few people?" Wang Chong suddenly recovered and turned to look at his little sister. Still going out?" Wang Xiaoyao's eyes widened in shock. She remembered that her father had said that if they were to go out recklessly, he would break their legs. "Why are you afraid?" Wang Chong said. I'm not afraid." As expected, the Wang family's little sister fell for it. Wang Chong chuckled. Bringing his little sister, this free bodyguard, he turned around and headed towards the area where the Hu of the western regions resided. Chapter 16. Vermilion Bird Street was bustling with people. Sitting in the carriage, Wang Chong parted the curtains and looked around. There were many blue-eyed, red-bearded Hu shuttling through the streets. With a single glance, Wang Chong could make out the fearsome Turks, the small but aggressive Tibetans, the Silla and Gogurians, who looked similar to the Han but exuded a completely different disposition. There were also the tall and muscular Western regioners, Abbasid Caliphate, Karak-Spazinu, and others with red, brown and golden hair. Seeing these Hu from various regions, Wang Chong felt an indescribable feeling. Regardless of which parallel world he was in, the Tang dynasty would always be the most confident Tang dynasty. It would always welcome the entire world with its most open attitude. Even when it was fighting with the Hu, the Tang dynasty didn't completely ostracize the Hu. In this space-time continuum, it was without a doubt the center of the world. But it was a pity. Wang Chong felt a twinge in his heart, but he quickly regained his senses. Vermilion Bird Street was the place where the Hu gathered the most. If he wanted to find the Tusin, the monks from the western regions, this was the best place. However, Wang Chong wasn't here to try his luck. Luck was the most unreliable thing. The person Wang Chong was looking for was someone else. In the entire Vermilion Bird Street, including the entire eastern region of the capital, there was no one who had a better understanding of the Hu than that person. In his previous life, due to his arrogance, the Tang dynasty missed out on the precious Wuxia steel. As a result, There was barely any Wuxia steel left in the Tang dynasty. Initially, this could have greatly strengthened the Tang dynasty. Wang Chong was here to correct this mistake. Learn from the barbarians in order to subdue the barbarians. This was the saying of a person named Wei Yuan in the world he came from. Humans were divided into barbarians, but technology wasn't. This was even more so for Wuxia steel. As long as he could change the tragedy of his previous life, Wang Chong didn't care where he came from. Go! The carriage made a turn, carrying Wang Chong and his sister into an inconspicuous alley. Oh, isn't this young Master Chong? As soon as Wang Chong walked in with his little sister, a smiling fat face immediately looked up from behind the counter. The chubby man grinned at Wang Chong, revealing a golden incisor that was very eye-catching. This was a pawn shop. Although it looked deserted and the fat man was the only one inside, it was a pawn shop. However, Wang Chong knew that the guy in front of him was filthy rich. If you don't open for business for 3 years, once you do, you'll eat for 3 years. He specialized in the pawning business of the Hu in the capital and the hedonistic science. If anyone was short of silver or soft goods, they would come here to pawn them. This was especially so for the Hu. As guests in a foreign land, they would always be strapped for cash, and it was inevitable that they would come here to pawn their goods. Due to this reason, the chubby man was extremely well informed about the Hu in the capital, and he was given the nickname of Big Golden Tooth. Wang Chong had been idling around in the capital, befriending shady characters like Ma Zhou. However, it wasn't completely without benefits. Big Golden Tooth was one of the useful friends that Wang Chong befriended. Even though he felt the pinch, Wang Chong gritted his teeth. He placed an ingot of silver on the table. Big Golden Tooth never did things for free. In order for him to speak, he had to cut some flesh every time. I'm here to buy some news. A few Buddhist monks from Sindhu have arrived in the capital. They are bald and wearing a large kasaya. They are easy to recognize. I want to know where they are. Wang Chong said. Young Master Chong is indeed forthright. As expected of the descendant of Duke Zhou. Sindhi monks? Why is young Master Chong looking for them? These fellows speak strangely, and they often persuade others to believe in their religion. Young Master Chong should avoid greeting them. Furthermore, even if young Master Chong is looking for them, it is already too late. These fellows have already returned to Sindhu a few days ago. Big Golden Tooth smiled happily. As he caressed the silver ingot, he lowered his head and spoke to Wang Chong. What? Upon hearing those words, Wang Chong's heart skipped a beat and he widened his eyes. They've returned? Even though Wang Chong had expected that the 2 monks would have arrived at the Tang dynasty, he didn't expect that the 2 Buddhist monks would have already returned. Indeed, they took the carriage of the Zhaowu from the white agate jewelry shop to the west of the city. If young Master Chong has any business with them, you can head west along the main road. You might be able to catch up to them, Big Golden Tooth said. Wang Chong shook his head. After leaving the capital, heading west would be the vast mountains and deserts. A journey of 3 days was more than sufficient for them to walk out of the Jade Gate Pass. The world was so vast, where could he find a carriage that could carry 2 Buddhist monks? Big Golden Tooth's words were just to console him. Thank you. Walking out of the pawn shop, Wang Chong felt an indescribable sense of disappointment. In the end, this Wuxia steel was still fated to be with him. Let's go. Let's return home. The 2 siblings boarded the carriage and left the pawn shop. By the time they returned to the Wang family residence, the sky had already turned completely dark. The entire residence was brightly lit, but it only made it more silent. Hold it right there. When Wang Chong and his sister tiptoed through the door and were about to return to their respective rooms, a cold bellow suddenly sounded from above. Crap! The 2 siblings' bodies froze and they slowly turned their heads around. At the top of the hall, 2 lanterns were lit, and from the light, a cold face slowly appeared. It was staring coldly at the 2 siblings. Mother! Wang Xiaoyao's body shuddered. She turned her head around timidly and called out. Mother! Wang Chong's face was filled with uneasiness as well. After circling outside, he purposely went to Big Gold Tooth's place to avoid his mother. Yet, he still ended up being caught by his mother. Looking at his mother's frosty expression, it was hard to tell how long she had waited for him. Clearly, The matter at the vast crane pavilion had been exposed. "You two bastards, let me ask you, where did you go today?" Madame Wang's cold expression was daunting. The two siblings felt their scalps going numb. In the Wang family, even though Father Wang was strict, he spent most of his time outside and didn't have the time to discipline them. The one who was truly in charge of the two siblings was their mother, Zhao Shuhua. Other families had a loving mother and strict father, but the Wang family had a strict mother and loving father. Compared to their mother, their father was much more loving. We went to the vast crane pavilion." Wang Chong's heart trembled. Knowing that he couldn't hide it from his mother, he could only brace himself and reveal the truth. "Went to the vast crane pavilion? You only went to the vast crane pavilion?" Madame Wang slammed the sandalwood table fiercely. Pung! Wang Chong's knees caved in. He didn't argue any further and knelt down. "I'm sorry, mother. I was wrong on this matter." Wang Chong knew what his mother was angry about. Regardless of whether it was in this life or his previous life, what Wang Chong couldn't bear to see was his mother's disappointment. Even though she looked strict on the surface, after his previous life, Wang Chong knew that she was as weak as anyone else in her heart. She loved this family deeply as well. Because she had lost something, she cherished it. In his previous life, when his mother's frail body slowly collapsed before him, Wang Chong felt a sharp pain in his heart. As such, when Wang Chong was reincarnated in this life, he swore to himself that no matter what reason he had, he would never anger his mother and make her grieve and cry for him. "Wrong? Are you only wrong?" Madame Wang trembled in anger. "It's one thing for you to mess around, but to bring your little sister to the vast crane pavilion as well. Do you know that the Yao clan's old master Yao has already reported our family to His Majesty and your grandfather? This matter has already caused a huge uproar in the capital. After the morning court session ended, your big uncle didn't even return home. Instead, he paid us a visit in anger and questioned us on what we were up to and whether we were intending to cause the death of the entire Wang clan." "What?" Wang Chong's body trembled. He lifted his head abruptly in shock. In his previous life, he wasn't involved in this matter at all. Thus, he didn't expect that the Yao clan's old master Yao would report him and his little sister to His Majesty. In fact, even his big uncle had come to question them. How could this be? Wang Chong muttered to himself as waves of shock surged in his heart. He thought that Yao Guangyi wanted to frame his father and drive a wedge between his father and the king of Song. Logically speaking, he wouldn't blow this matter up, at least not to the point where the current emperor would know about it. However, Wang Chong realized that he had underestimated a person, and that person was the Yao clan's old master Yao. If Yao Guangyi was said to be a sly old fox, then this old fox was groomed by the Yao clan's old master Yao. Compared to old master Yao, his ability to turn clouds and rain with one turn in the imperial court was not even 1/10 of old master Yao's. Wang Chong remembered clearly that in his previous life, old master Yao had a nephew who bribed an official in the royal court. In the end, this official with the surname Wei went to the Holy Emperor and reported his nephew. Originally, in the royal court, if such a thing happened to an official, his political career would basically come to an end. However, in the end, old master Yao's methods were heaven-defying. In the end, not only did nothing happen to him, the official who reported him was even demoted. As for that nephew, he was naturally acquitted and the matter was left unsettled. This matter left a deep impression on Wang Chong. Be it in his previous life or this life, he had heard his father, eldest brother and second brother mention it many times. Thus, even though he had never met this old master Yao before, Wang Chong had a huge taboo towards this old master Yao. The way he did things was unfathomable and couldn't be judged based on common sense. Wang Chong knew that in this matter, he had only paid attention to Yao Guangyi and neglected the hidden old master Yao of the Yao family. Old master Yao and his grandfather had never been on good terms. The two of them were political rivals and this relationship had been going on since the previous dynasty. Furthermore, Yao Feng was doted on by old master Yao. In his previous life, old master Yao even went to the Holy Emperor to seek an official position for his grandson. It wasn't surprising that he would do such a thing. Thinking about it, it wasn't surprising that old master Yao would bring this matter to the Holy Emperor in order to deal a blow to his grandfather. What surprised Wang Chong the most was Big Uncle. Big Uncle and his father didn't have a good relationship. Different from his father, Big Uncle wasn't a military general. Instead, he held an official position in the royal court. His status was high and his authority was immense. His grandfather's old friends and disciples, as well as his influence in the royal court, were all inherited by Big Uncle. Thus, he looked down on his father, Wang Yan, as well as his siblings, who were of a lower status than him. Wang Chong's other uncles and aunts were meek and submissive. However, Wang Chong's father, Wang Yan, was a soldier and had an upright character. Thus, there were many times when he would go against his father and get into conflict with him. Thus, the relationship between Big Uncle and his father was the worst. Wang Chong had never liked him in his previous life. He just didn't expect that because of the matter between him and his little sister, Wang Chong would pay a visit personally. You still don't know. Madame Wang's hearing was much sharper than Wang Chong imagined. Hearing his muttering, she was even more furious. It's not like you don't know about the relationship between your uncle and your father. He has never liked your father. Your grandfather's 70th birthday is coming up soon. Do you want your father to lose his reputation and face in front of so many uncles, and your grandfather's students and old friends? At the end, Madame Wang felt bitter and her eyes reddened. Tears were about to fall from her eyes. Yesterday, she thought that her child had finally grown up. She didn't expect him to barge into the vast crane pavilion today and beat up the Yao clan Gongzi along with his little sister. This matter involved both the Yao and Wang clan, and this wasn't a small matter. Furthermore, the old master behind the Yao clan had even reported his father-in-law to the Holy Emperor. Chapter 17. The greater Madame Wang's expectations for Wang Chong, the greater the disappointment she felt at this moment. This wasn't just directed at Wang Chong, it was also directed at herself. If she hadn't been overly lenient toward Wang Chong, things wouldn't have developed to such an extent. Mother, I'm sorry. I know my mistake. Wang Chong knelt on the floor and lowered his head, blaming himself. Even though he did this for his father and the Wang clan, and Wang Chong didn't think that he was wrong, his mother was completely unaware of this matter. Wang Chong had no way to explain everything to her. Everything would have to wait for half a month later. Only when his father discovered Yao Guangyi's scheme would his mother understand his painstaking efforts. Mother, little brother isn't in the wrong on this matter. Suddenly, a stubborn voice sounded from the side. It was as clear as a silver bell. Hearing her little brother constantly admitting his mistakes despite being wronged, Wang Xiaoyao couldn't take it anymore and stood up. Even though she was afraid of her mother, Wang Xiaoyao couldn't bear to see her little brother being wronged. This matter isn't little brother's fault. Why do you have to say that little brother is in the wrong? Wang Xiaoyao stared at her mother stubbornly and said indignantly, "What did you say?" Madame Wang was taken aback. She widened her eyes and trembled in anger. "You still dare to talk back? Little sister, stop it." Wang Chong was also taken aback. He hurriedly pulled his little sister's hand. But this time, his little sister actually shook him off. Why can't I say it? Wang family's little sister's stubborn temper flared up. This time she didn't listen to Wang Chong at all. That Yao Feng instigated Ma Zhou to frame little brother for kidnapping a lady, so little brother and I went to teach him a lesson. Is this also wrong? What? You said that Yao clan's Yao Feng instigated Ma Zhou to harm your brother? Madame Wang was truly shocked this time. She looked at the kneeling Wang Chong and the stubborn Wang Xiaoyao. Clearly, she wasn't aware of this matter. Of course, I saw it with my own eyes. That fellow Ma Zhou has already admitted it. Wang Xiaoyao said confidently. The thoughts of a 10-year-old girl were innocent. Until now, she still thought that the reason why Wang Chong brought her to the vast crane pavilion to teach Yao Feng a lesson was to exact vengeance. Repaying kindness with kindness and enmity with enmity. In this matter, he completely supported his little brother. Madame Wang was originally furious, but at this moment, her anger suddenly subsided. She looked at the two siblings in a daze, unable to say a word. Initially, Madame Wang didn't believe that Wang Chong would kidnap a lady. Her son might be stubborn, disobedient, or loafing around, but Madame Wang believed that no matter how bad he was, it was impossible for him to be so bad that he would do such a thing. The reason why he was teaching him a lesson was because regardless of whether Wang Chong had done it or not, his reputation as a rapist had already spread, and even the Wang family's reputation had been affected. The people outside wouldn't care about the truth. They would only know that this matter was done by Wang Chong, and the Wang family was the descendant of the Wang family. Really? Madame Wang asked. However, she wasn't looking at Wang Xiaoyao, but at the kneeling Wang Chong. Wang Chong hesitated for a moment before nodding his head. Even though he didn't come to the vast crane pavilion for vengeance, his little sister's words weren't wrong. Sigh. Madame Wang sighed deeply. Suddenly, she was at a loss for words. Wang Chong and his sister had caused such a huge trouble, implicating the Yao and Wang family, and even reaching the ears of the emperor. Logically speaking, they should be taught a lesson. However, Yao Feng made use of Ma Zhou to plot against Wang Chong, causing Wang Chong's reputation in the capital to fall to the ground. Infuriated, Wang Chong brought his little sister to the vast crane pavilion to teach him a lesson. This was understandable. Even though Madame Wang didn't like Wang Chong and his sister causing trouble everywhere, her husband was, after all, a general who guarded the borders. Madame Wang didn't wish for her child to be a coward who was afraid of everything. From this aspect, Madame Wang didn't think that there was anything wrong with the actions of Wang Chong and his sister. Stand up. Madame Wang sighed. I will explain this matter to your big uncle personally. As long as this matter isn't your fault, even if the emperor were to ask about it, we will be able to answer to him. Thank you, mother. Wang Chong stood up and heaved a long sigh of relief. Turning to look at his little sister, Wang Chong couldn't help but feel grateful. At this moment, Wang Chong couldn't help but feel glad that he brought his little sister along for this operation. Otherwise, this matter would be difficult to resolve. Not bad, right? Seeing that her brother was looking at her, the Wang family's little sister lifted her proud little face without any humility. Wang Chong grinned and secretly gave her a thumbs up to satisfy his little sister's arrogance. She was his little sister after all. He didn't dote on her for nothing. However, even though this matter is Yao Feng's fault, the two of you are too much. At this moment, the voice of their mother, Zhao Shuhua, echoed in their ears. Hearing their mother's voice, the faces of the siblings immediately collapsed. Especially you. As a girl, how can you fight with others like a boy? How unsightly is that? Madame Wang's gaze turned to look at Wang Xiaoyao, who had talked back to her, and reprimanded her once more. Yes, Yaoer knows her mistake. The Wang family's little sister's face darkened. With a "I knew it would turn out like this" expression, she lowered her head and kicked the ground out of boredom. Her mother's words went in one ear and out the other. If such a thing happens again, tell your brother that you won't go. If he dares to say anything else, tell me and I will break his legs. Madame Wang didn't let go of this opportunity to discipline her and continued to nag. The Wang family's little sister's round eyes started to wander around. Clearly, she was distracted and wanted to slip away. Upon seeing this scene, Wang Chong chuckled in his heart. He already knew what she was up to. Mother, I'm hungry. Why don't we go and eat first? The Wang family's little sister suddenly pressed her stomach with a pitiful and aggrieved look. As she spoke, a rumbling sound came from her stomach. Madame Wang's heart softened, but her face soon turned stern. We can talk about eating later. In the future, you're not allowed to fight with others. Look, who's that? The Wang family's little sister suddenly lifted her head and widened her eyes in astonishment. Making use of the moment when her mother turned her head back in astonishment, Wang Xiaoyao pulled her brother and ran. Brother, run! Wang Chong chuckled. Flinging his arm away as though he had practiced this countless times, he ran with his little sister. Behind them, Madame Wang's furious voice sounded, Wang Xiaoyao. If you dare to run, I will lock you up for 3 days. For the time being, Wang Chong managed to escape the calamity of the vast crane pavilion. Early in the morning, he received news of the two Sindhi Buddhists Wang Chong. As expected, Wang Xiaoyao was locked up for 3 days. By the time Wang Chong went to look for her, she was already nowhere to be seen. Even though Father Wang said that he would return at night to deal with them, there was no news of him until late at night. Most likely, his father should have been transferred back to the borders by now. Everything was the same as in his previous life. Wang Chong lay on the bed with his hands crossed behind his head. However, he couldn't fall asleep no matter how hard he tried. The events of the day surfaced in his mind once more. The two Cindy Buddhists Wang Chong had returned so early. This was something that Wang Chong didn't expect. That shouldn't be the case. Could it be that the Tang dynasty and Wuxia Steel are fated to be together? Lying on the bed, Wang Chong felt deeply indignant. Given his current situation, Wuxia Steel was the best opportunity for him to accumulate a huge amount of wealth. Even though it wasn't to say that Wang Chong couldn't think of other ways to make money, all the other money-making opportunities paled in comparison. But all other money-making opportunities paled in comparison. Otherwise, Wang Chong wouldn't have subconsciously thought of Wuxia Steel. Not only so, Wuxia Steel had another special meaning. In his previous life, the Tang dynasty missed this opportunity, and in the end, Wuxia Steel was used by their enemies. In the end, thousands of Tang dynasty elites fell under the blades of Wuxia Steel, and their blood flowed like a river. This was a huge blow to the Tang dynasty. This left a deep impression on Wang Chong. That was why he was so bothered by it and wanted to change everything. In this life, Wuxia Steel had just appeared and wasn't well known. This was an excellent opportunity to make use of it. Wang Chong originally thought that he could make good use of this opportunity to accumulate a fortune for himself and benefit the Central Plains. However, he still failed. What is going on? Could it be that because of my rebirth, the Tang dynasty couldn't even get a tiny bit of Wuxia Steel in the end? Wang Chong laid on the bed, feeling that something was amiss. It seemed that he had neglected something important. Wang Chong didn't think that there was anything wrong with making use of other people's strengths. In his mind, Wang Chong carefully recalled the incident regarding Wuxia Steel in his previous life. In his previous life, Wang Chong clearly remembered that there was a clan that came into contact with the two Cindy Buddhist monks and purchased some Wuxia Steel from them at a high price. If the two Cindy monks were to return now, wouldn't that mean that the clan wouldn't be able to purchase the Wuxia Steel, and all of this wouldn't have happened? Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil, and he couldn't make sense of it. Something isn't right. After an unknown period of time, Wang Chong suddenly thought of something. Alarmed, he leaped up from the bed. Those two Cindy Buddhist monks only know Sanskrit, and they don't know the language of the Central Plains. How could a person who doesn't know the slightest bit of Sanskrit talk to them, and even say that they are weird? Wang Chong finally understood what was amiss. Sindhu was located to the west of the western regions, far away from the Central Plains. The monks there rarely came to the Central Plains. Even if they did, the majority of the Cindy monks who came here knew the language of the Central Plains, and they had no problem communicating with them. However, these two Cindy monks were different. They only knew Sanskrit and nothing else. Even the Hu beyond the Great Wall and the Hu of the western regions couldn't understand their language. It was precisely because of this that no one knew what they were up to, and even more so, no one knew that they were selling Wuxia Steel. Thus, when the matter of Wuxia Steel was exposed, it caused such a huge uproar. Someone once said that if only those who knew Sanskrit in the Tang dynasty weren't so rare, if only someone could ask those Cindy monks, if only the Wuxia Steel from Hyderabad could be used by the Tang dynasty, then the strength of the Tang dynasty would be completely different, and it would become even more powerful. Big Golden Tooth said that they spoke in a weird manner, and if he had never met them, he wouldn't have said that. That's not right. The people Big Golden Tooth saw were Tocharian monks, not Cindy monks. Wang Chong contemplated for a moment, and suddenly he recalled a story from his previous life and came to a realization. The Tocharians and Cindy were neighbors, and they also believed in Buddhism. Furthermore, they built a huge reclining Buddha statue, which was extremely spectacular. Furthermore, there would often be many Tocharian monks coming to the Central Plains to spread their teachings. As the Tang dynasty didn't have much understanding of the countries in the far west, in this era, people would often confuse the Tocharian monks with the Cindy monks, and even think that the Tocharians were Cindy, and the Cindy were Tocharians. When Big Golden Tooth said that these people spoke in a weird manner, he was clearly talking about the Tocharians. Thinking of this, Wang Chong was overjoyed, and the knot in his heart was instantly swept away. If the people Big Golden Tooth saw weren't Cindy monks, that meant that the two Cindy monks were still in the Tang dynasty, and they were still here. In other words, he still had a chance. In that instant, Wang Chong felt that every cell in his body was relaxing, and his heart was filled with joy. Even though Big Golden Tooth gave Wang Chong the wrong information, Wang Chong didn't come out empty-handed. White Agate Jewelry Shop. Wang Chong recalled the place that Big Golden Tooth mentioned. The Tocharians were far from the Central Plains, and when the monks there headed to the Tang dynasty, they would ride on the carriages of the Zhawu people of the western region. In his previous life, Wang Chong knew that these people and horses were fixed. Only certain Zhawu people would ride on these monks. Cindy and the Tocharians were neighbors, so there was only one way to get to the Tang dynasty. If he could find out the whereabouts of the Tocharians at the white agate jewelry shop, he would definitely be able to find out the whereabouts of the two Cindy monks. Chapter 18. The sun had just risen when the entire Wang family residence was in a state of slumber. Wang Chong discreetly opened a gap and slipped out of his room. "Hold it right there." Just as he was about to slip out, he heard a bellow from above him. "Young Master Chong, Madam has ordered that you are forbidden from leaving for the next few days. Before old master returns, it is best for young master to remain in his room. Please don't make things difficult for us." Outside the door, two godlike figures stood before Wang Chong, blocking even the rising sun above his head. Lifting his head, Wang Chong immediately saw two familiar figures. With a cold expression, they stood guard outside the door with a stern expression. With a single look, anyone could tell that these two were loyal and impartial. They wouldn't show the slightest bit of leniency. "Guard Shen, Guard Meng." Wang Chong called out the names of the duo. The two godlike figures outside the door were Shen Hai and Meng Long. Yesterday, when the two siblings returned from causing trouble, his little sister was grounded for 3 days. On the other hand, Shen Hai and Meng Long were sent to stand guard outside Wang Chong's room. Wang Chong learned of this on that very night. "Young Master Chong, there's no need to speak anymore. This is Madam's order. Please don't make things difficult for us," the two of them said coldly. Before Wang Chong could speak, they had already cut off all of his excuses. As they spoke, the two of them didn't even glance at Wang Chong. In the Wang family, Shen Hai and Meng Long weren't the only two guards. However, Wang Chong knew that these two held the highest standing in the family. The two of them were loyal to the Wang family. Other than his father and mother, no one else could order them around. His little sister was grounded and his mother had sent Shen Hai and Meng Long to his door. Clearly, it was to keep an eye on him and prevent him from causing trouble like the previous time. If it was any other time, Wang Chong wouldn't mind staying at home for a few more days until his father returned. But time waits for no man. Calculating the time, the two Cindy monks would only be able to stay for another 15 days at most before returning. If he could not find them within this period of time and obtain the Wuxia steel from them, then the Tang dynasty would never be able to obtain such a treasure. "Guard Shen, Guard Meng." Wang Chong smiled and called out their names. Although the two people sent by his mother were very difficult to deal with, Wang Chong was confident that he could persuade them. "I know you are loyal, so I won't make things difficult for you. If you don't want me to go out, I can stay. But have you ever thought about it? Mother can imprison me for a while, but can she imprison me forever? Sooner or later I will go out. Don't tell me that it doesn't matter if I get into trouble at that time?" "Ah!" With just a single sentence from Wang Chong, the two loyal guards who had prepared themselves mentally to reject Wang Chong were dumbfounded. The two of them stared at Wang Chong in bewilderment. Their mouths opened a few times, but they were unable to say a single word. Madam had said that young Master Chong must not be allowed to leave the house. Instinctively, the two of them thought that it would suffice as long as they followed her instructions. But at this moment, upon hearing Wang Chong's words, the two of them felt that something was amiss. Indeed, if young Master Chong were to get into trouble after the old master returns, would it really be unrelated to them? Wouldn't that be shirking responsibility in order to distance himself from them? It was one thing if it was anyone else, but Shen Hai and Meng Long were loyal to the Wang family. It was precisely because of this that they felt uneasy after hearing Wang Chong's words. The more they thought about it, the more they felt that Wang Chong's words might be true. In an instant they couldn't help but feel anxious. "I'm ashamed." Seeing the faces of the two reddening, Wang Chong apologized in his heart. The two of them were the most loyal guards of the Wang family. Wang Chong didn't wish for this to happen, but in order to obtain the Wuxia steel, as well as this opportunity for the Tang dynasty, he had no choice but to do so. "Guards, there's no need to worry. I'm just saying it casually. I'm a descendant of the Wang family, and the Wang family is my home. Why would I harm him?" Wang Chong's tone softened and he changed his words to dispel the doubts of the two. Shen Hai and Meng Long heaved a long sigh of relief. Even the two of them didn't realize that with just a few words from Wang Chong, their mentality had changed drastically. At the very beginning, the two of them were absolutely ignorant and stone-faced. But now, they had unknowingly started to follow Wang Chong's train of thought. Indeed, young Master Chong is a descendant of the Wang family, so how could he harm the Wang family? Even though the two of them didn't say anything, they were nodding their heads in agreement. I know that mother must have sent you two here because I got into trouble outside. But I believe that you two should know that I wasn't the one at fault for last night's incident. That Yao Feng harbored malicious intentions and made use of Ma Zhou to harm me. He even said that I was the one who abducted a lady. It's one thing for me to be punished at home, but he even implicated the Wang family in this matter. Do you think that I can tolerate this? Tell me, do you think that the descendants of our Wang family would fear him? Wang Chong said earnestly. Young Master Chong is right. If not for Madam's orders, we would have gone to teach him a lesson as well. That Yao clan has gone too far. I knew that even though young Master is mischievous, he wouldn't stoop to such an extent. Shen Hai and Meng Long said indignantly. From the start, the two of them had wronged Wang Chong. They thought that Wang Chong and Ma Zhou had really committed those atrocities together. But it was precisely because of this that they felt even more ashamed now that the truth was out. On one hand, Wang Chong was touched, on the other hand, he was delighted. He knew that he was about to convince the two of them. I'm just a step away. Wang Chong clenched his fists tightly and added in the final piece of news, Guard Shen and Guard Meng. It's my character that if I want to do something, I will definitely do it. Even if I was grounded back then, I would still return after that. I don't know if you two have ever thought of this, but other than keeping an eye on me and preventing me from leaving, there is actually another way. That is to follow me out. Even so, there are some things that I have to do. Why don't you follow me? Wherever I go, you two will follow me. This way, if you realize that my actions are harmful to the Wang family, you can stop me in time. Isn't this much better than blindly stopping me? Shen Hai and Meng Long were taken aback. The two of them stared at one another speechlessly. Initially, the two of them thought that it would suffice as long as they kept an eye on Wang Chong and prevent him from causing trouble. However, the two of them suddenly realized that what Wang Chong said made more sense. Furthermore, the two of them couldn't find any reason to object to it. Just like what Wang Chong said, it's better to disperse than to block. When Madam and Old Master were angry, they might lock him up for 3 days, 5 days, or even longer, but he would eventually have to come out. When the time comes, he would still cause trouble. If it was any other guard, so be it. In any case, it had nothing to do with them. However, Shen Hai and Meng Long were different. The two of them were loyal to the Wang family, and they didn't wish for such a situation to occur. Young Master Chong, we won't object to you going out. However, we have already made it clear that wherever you go, we will follow you. Even if you have to go to the toilet, we will follow you. Young Master Chong should know that we are boorish people. If young Master Chong were to cause trouble outside and cause trouble for Old Master and Madam, don't blame us for being merciless. That after contemplating for a long moment, the two of them finally came to a decision. Don't worry. My cultivation realm isn't comparable to yours. If such a matter were to really happen, don't you know what to do? Wang Chong chuckled. Even Shen Hai and Meng Long didn't realize that with just a few words from Wang Chong, their attitude had taken a 180-degree turn. Yet, the two of them didn't think that there was anything wrong with it. If it was before today, the two of them would have never thought that something like this would happen. Bringing along Shen Hai and Meng Long, the two powerful guards, Wang Chong left the Wang residence and headed for the west of the city. Not long after the three of them left, a guard hurriedly barged into the Wang family's inner residence. Madam, young Master Chong ran out? Hearing those words, Madam Wang was shocked. Her body jolted and she abruptly sat up. She asked anxiously, where are Shen Hai and Meng Long? Why didn't they stop him? Shen Hai and Meng Long were loyal to the Wang family, and it was impossible for them to betray her orders. This was also the reason why Madam Wang sent them to watch over Wang Chong. With them around, even if Wang Chong were to run out, they would be able to chase him back. However, what happened next left her even more shocked. Madam, they ran out together with young Master Chong. The guard reported honestly. What? Hearing this news, Madame Wang was so shocked that the teacup in her hand fell to the ground. This was even more shocking than Wang Chong sneaking out. How is this possible? He rushed to the white agate jewelry shop in the west of the city and successfully obtained the whereabouts of the two Cindy monks from the western region's Jiawu merchants. Without stopping, he rushed over as fast as he could. On the bustling Xianshui Street, Wang Chong finally saw the two Cindy monks. The two of them were dressed in brown robes and their right shoulders were exposed, revealing their dark chests and arms. Different from what Wang Chong remembered, the two Cindy monks weren't completely bald. Instead, they had a layer of coarse black hair. The two of them walked slowly. Amidst the bustling crowd, they didn't stand out. I finally found them. Looking at the two Cindy Buddhist monks outside the window, Wang Chong heaved a long sigh of relief. He felt as though he had found a treasure. In this era, there weren't many who knew of Sindhu. However, Wang Chong knew that in another time-space continuum, it had an even more resounding name, India. Young Master Chong, are they the people you are looking for? In the carriage, Shun Hai and Meng Long were also observing the two monks through the window. Ever since they left the residence with Wang Chong, the two of them had been on tenterhooks, afraid that Wang Chong would meet some shady friends and bring trouble to the Wang clan. However, upon seeing how Wang Chong went through a huge group of people just to find the two Cindy Buddhist monks, the two of them heaved a long sigh of relief. However, even as they felt relieved, curiosity welled up in their hearts. If Wang Chong were to look for Ma Zhou, Li Zhou, Yao Gongzi or Li Gongzi, the two of them wouldn't find it strange at all. However, two Buddhist monks. This was way too bizarre. For the first time, Shun Hai and Meng Long were curious about what their young master was doing outside. Don't underestimate them. Wang Chong knew what the two of them were thinking and he couldn't help but chuckle. In the Tang dynasty, monks were one of the most inconspicuous people. However, Wang Chong knew that the two of them weren't ordinary monks. Don't be fooled by their blackness. In a few years, who knows how many people in the capital will regret missing out on these two. Shun Hai and Meng Long glanced at one another and their curiosity deepened. Wang Chong chuckled, not bothering to explain further. On the street, the two Cindy monks were using their own methods to sell Wuxia steel ores. Wang Chong realized that they weren't randomly looking for people to sell their Wuxia steel ores to. Instead, they were looking for those who were dressed lavishly and seemed to be wealthy merchants. It's no wonder why they weren't able to sell their ores. Chapter 19. It wouldn't be a problem for the duo to do something like this in the Abbasid Caliphate, Charaxpazinu, or Damascus. That was because as long as it was a profitable business, the Abbasid merchants would do anything. Jewelry, spices, silk, tea leaves, porcelain, ores. As long as they could think of something profitable, they would dabble in it without any reservations. Even human trafficking was a part of the Abbasid Caliphate. However, this was the Tang dynasty, and not everyone was interested in the ore and smelting business. The duo had chosen the wrong target for their actions. Not to mention how many people in the capital knew Sanskrit. Even if they had chosen the right target for their ramblings, the other party might not be able to understand their intentions. There was no question that their actions were a loss to them, but also a loss to the Great Tang. Perhaps they didn't harbor much hope for this trip from the very start. Perhaps they were already prepared to return empty-handed. I have to change everything. A glint flashed across Wang Chong's eyes as he walked out of the carriage. Shun Hai and Meng Long followed closely behind him. Greetings to the two masters. Wang Chong strode over, stood behind the two, and respectfully bowed. Hearing the commotion behind them, the two Cindy Buddhist monks turned their heads around. However, when they saw that it was only a teenager, both of them revealed a disappointed look. Bolo Savuto. One of the monks had a grim expression and repeatedly waved his hand at Wang Chong, indicating that he should leave. They were rejected. Shun Hai and Meng Long glanced at one another, and they could see the smile in the other's eyes. From the moment they were in the carriage, they could tell that the two Cindy monks had their own rules. Even though they were looking for people and there were quite a number of people looking for them at the same time, most of them would be rejected by them after asking a few questions. Without a doubt, their young master was among those who were rejected as well. The two of them were filled with curiosity toward this trip. But from the looks of it now, they had overestimated him. Their young master was still their young master, and he hadn't changed at all. So young master didn't come to an agreement with the other party. It's not that he didn't come to an agreement, but he probably didn't even come into contact with them. Young master probably didn't expect to be rejected. The two of them laughed softly. But in the next moment something shocking happened. Why are you in such a hurry to reject me? Although I'm young, I'm the most suitable candidate to purchase your Wuxia steel. Wang Chong's tone suddenly changed. With a smile, he spoke in a language that Shunhai and Menglong had never heard before. Sanskrit. Shunhai and Menglong were stunned. The syllables and rhythm of Wang Chong's words were exactly the same as the two Buddhists. Their young master actually knew Sanskrit. How was this possible? Disbelief was written all over their faces. They simply could not believe their ears. Not only was his young master's Sanskrit not rusty, but he was also quite fluent. It looked as if he had been learning for decades. But the question was, how did young master learn it? The two of them had stayed in the Wang mansion for more than 10 years, but they had never seen Wang Chong take on a Sanskrit teacher. No Sanskrit teacher had ever paid a visit to the Wang family residence. Where did her young master learn to speak Sanskrit so fluently? You know Sanskrit? The two Sindhi monks were even more astonished than Shunhai and Menglong. This was especially so for the foreign monk who had ignored Wang Chong and turned his head away. They had been in the Central Plains for a few months now, but this was the first Han they met who could speak Sanskrit in the Tang dynasty. Furthermore, it was an unassuming child who seemed to be in his teens. This made the two of them feel a sense of closeness toward the child before them. Hey, can't a child know Sanskrit? Wang Chong asked calmly. He learned Sanskrit 30 years later in his previous life. At that time, although there were many people like him who knew Sanskrit, it was not rare. But at this moment, he knew that he was probably one of the few people in the capital who knew how to speak Sanskrit. I won't hide it from you. I am a descendant of Duke Zhou of the Tang dynasty. Based on your words, I am equivalent to the Kshatriya of Sindhu. In the Central Plains, there aren't many people who are interested in Wuxia steel and are able to afford it. I am definitely one of them. Wang Chong looked at the two Buddhist monks as he spoke. As he spoke, he took out a token, flashed it, and kept it. Do you see the two people at the back? They are the guards of my residence. Now you should believe me, right? The two Sindhi Buddhist monks stared at Wang Chong in astonishment. To think that this child would know of the existence of the Kshatriya of Sindhu despite his young age. But soon their faces darkened. Wuxia steel? I'm afraid that you are mistaken. We aren't selling Wuxia steel but Hyderabad ores. Furthermore, the reason why we traveled so far to the Central Plains is to find a customer who is willing to buy our ores. Or perhaps a long-term business partner. Even if you can speak our Sanskrit, we won't agree to your request easily. The two of them said grimly. Ah! Wang Chong's face was filled with astonishment. This reply was out of his expectations. But what Wang Chong was more concerned about was another matter. Hyderabad ores. What you are selling isn't Wuxia steel but ores. The two Buddhist monks nodded their heads seriously. Wang Chong was dumbfounded. This joke had gone too far. He thought that the two of them were selling finished Wuxia steel. He didn't think that they would be selling raw ores. But thinking about it carefully, the Hyderabad ores had only just appeared on the market. The name Wuxia steel would probably only appear in the world a few years later. In a moment of carelessness, he actually mentioned the name that would only appear in the world a few years later. Gongzi, the name Wuxia, doesn't seem to be from the Central Plains. This humble monk is knowledgeable and has been to many places, but I have never heard of this steel. May I know where Gongzi heard of it? The first Buddhist monk frowned and asked doubtfully. I heard that Sindhu's Hyderabad produced an incredible Wuxia steel. I thought that you were selling Wuxia steel. Of course, Wang Chong couldn't say that he heard of it in his previous life. Thus he casually replied. Oh! The two Buddhist monks were surprised. In the end, Wang Chong actually called Hyderabad ores as Wuxia steel. Sindhu only has Hyderabad ores, there isn't any Wuxia steel. Gongzi is probably mistaken. However, the name Wuxia steel is rather pleasant to the ears. If Gongzi doesn't mind, we hope to spread this name. Perhaps Wuxia steel can become the official name of Hyderabad ores. I don't mind. Wang Chong hurriedly waved his hands. However, A strange feeling welled up in his heart. In his previous life, Wang Chong had long forgotten how the name Wuxia steel came to be. But from the looks of it now, he was about to become the official name of this precious steel. This made Wang Chong feel as though he was personally making history. Thank you. On the other side, upon hearing Wang Chong's reply, the two Buddhist monks smiled. Their impression of this teenager instantly improved. Masters, before we talk business, may I first take a look at the Hyderabad ores in your hands? Wang Chong suddenly asked with a smile. Of course. Upon hearing Wang Chong's request, the two Buddhist monks didn't hesitate and readily agreed. It was reasonable for them to take a look at the goods before talking business. One of the monks raised his hand and soon, a black, ugly, and dirty metal bucket appeared in his hand. So it's here. Wang Chong was shocked. He had already noticed that the two monks were carrying a strange black and dirty metal bucket. It was obvious that it wasn't made in Middle Earth. However, Wang Chong didn't expect them to hide the Hyderabad ores inside. Here you go. Sure enough, the monk reached his right hand inside and quickly took out a black, mottled and uneven ores. He then handed it to Wang Chong. Looking at the Hyderabad ores in front of him, Wang Chong's heart suddenly started thumping. The Hyderabad ores. He had finally seen such a legendary ores. I've finally seen it. Wang Chong stared at the ores and his heart was in turmoil. Compared to its illustrious reputation in the future, the current Hyderabad ores were still unknown and unknown. Wang Chong was willing to bet that even these two Buddhist monks might not know the true significance of the Hyderabad ores in his hands. Xianshui Street was bustling with people. Countless wealthy merchants passed by him, but not a single one of them glanced in his direction. Wang Chong was well aware that if he hadn't appeared, the Tang dynasty would have missed out on the precious Hyderabad ores. Who? Wang Chong extended his hand and calmly took the Hyderabad ores from the two Sindhi Buddhist monks. So heavy. This was Wang Chong's first thought. The Hyderabad ores were much heavier than they looked. Wang Chong estimated that they weighed at least 40 to 50 jin. Even with Wang Chong's strength, it was still extremely strenuous. These two monks are very strong. Wang Chong couldn't help but glance at the two Buddhist monks. Previously, he had only noticed the Hyderabad ores on them, but he hadn't noticed their strength. For these two Buddhist monks to be able to carry the Hyderabad ores on them as if nothing had happened, it was clear that they possessed extraordinary strength. Wang Chong didn't pay too much attention to them. Instead, he quickly focused his attention on the ores in his hands. The Hyderabad ores that would shake the world in the future were now dark, mottled and unremarkable. One could even say that they were somewhat ugly. Just from its appearance, Wang Chong couldn't tell how different it was from other ores. From this point, it was no wonder that the Hyderabad ores were a pearl of the Tang dynasty. Despite the many scholars and geniuses of the Tang dynasty, not a single one of them was able to sense its value. But Wang Chong knew that the significance of this ores was incomparable to any other ores in the world. This was the sharpest and most perfect material for weapons in the world. The ores in the Hyderabad mountain range were only recently discovered by us. Its weight is at least 3 to 4 times that of other ores, making it extremely valuable. Just from this point alone, it is one of the best ores. The solemn voices of the two Sindhi monks sounded. Even though it's an ore, its iron content is extremely high. You don't need to go through any complicated procedures to extract what you need from it. If you need that kind of high-quality iron, then the Hyderabad ores will be even higher than your expectations. Also, Hyderabad ores are extremely sharp. We once tried to create a saber, and it didn't require too much polishing to be extremely sharp. Furthermore, it could easily cut through other sabers. This is an extremely good material for weapons. This is the first batch of ores from the Hyderabad mountain range. The higher the price, the more you buy, the more you will win our respect. You will be the most suitable partner for us to work with. The two Sindhi monks explained by the side. Hearing such a simple explanation, Wang Chong couldn't help but sigh in admiration. Based on such a straightforward explanation, it was no wonder that the two of them returned empty-handed. The Hyderabad ores weren't able to sell well in the Central Plains either. In comparison, the explanations of the later generations were much shorter, but they were also much more beautiful and impactful. The world's most beautiful weapon, the sharpest weapon, the nightmare of the battlefield with the most destructive power. Chapter 20. How much are you selling your Hyderabad ores? Wang Chong raised his head and asked. We don't just sell the ores. Firstly, we don't accept 5 baht coins, copper coins, or silver. The silver of the Central Plains doesn't circulate in our Sindhu. However, we can accept gold and jewels. The two monks said. Wang Chong nodded. This was the same as the Hu merchants of the western regions, so he wasn't surprised. In addition, we don't accept individual items. If Gongzi is just looking for novelty and wants to buy a few to play with or buy in small quantities, please forgive us for not accepting it. Gongzi should leave as soon as possible. The two monks said with a stern expression. The two of them had traveled tens of thousands of li to the Central Plains not to sell a few silver ingots and earn some money, but to find a big customer. This was the mission that they shouldered. Lastly, if we are to come to an agreement, at least half of the money must be paid in rations. This is the most important condition of our transaction. Only if you can do this will we view you as a true business partner. Furthermore, you and your clan will receive the respect and gratitude of all Sindhi. Our Hyderabad will also provide you with an endless supply of goods. The two Sindhi Buddhist monks said with a serious expression. Ah! Wang Chong exclaimed in surprise. He could understand why they didn't accept 5 baht coins, copper coins, and silver. But to demand that at least half of the money be paid in rations, this truly took Wang Chong by surprise. Who in the world would use rations as a substitute for a transaction? Wang Chong initially thought that the two monks were joking, but upon seeing their serious expressions, Wang Chong knew that they were serious. How could this be? Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. This could be said to be the strangest transaction he had ever heard. However, looking at the gazes of the duo, Wang Chong's heart jolted. Deep in his mind, he recalled some memories from his previous life that he had forgotten. Sindhu was different from the Central Plains. Sindhu had a large population, but it wasn't as prosperous as the Central Plains. Based on Wang Chong's understanding, Sindhu spent most of its time in extreme poverty, war, darkness, and chaos. This also explained why Sindhu, despite possessing such a precious strategic resource like Hyderabad, had never used it for themselves and instead sold it all over the world. They needed food, a lot of it. In truth, if they could, they probably hoped to exchange all of it for rations and bring it back to Sindhu. Thinking of this, Wang Chong's mind gradually became clear. Based on his memories, Sindhu should be in the midst of a riot. These two monks had come from Sindhu, and they bore a heavy responsibility. It was no wonder that they were not interested in small transactions. But this is not easy. Wang Chong's brow creased as he thought of something. As long as one had money, in theory, one could buy anything in the Tang dynasty. But the problem was that the Tang dynasty implemented grain control. It was very difficult to sell a single grain of rice or even a single grain of millet abroad. Food is the most important thing to the people. In reality, it wasn't just the Tang dynasty. Every dynasty before that had implemented strict grain control. These two Buddhist monks wanted to use half of the grain as a loan. This was equivalent to giving Wang Chong a difficult problem. Privately selling grain outside the country was equivalent to death. Just based on this condition, no one in the entire Tang dynasty would be able to satisfy these two Buddhist monks. Only then did Wang Chong realize that there was a reason why the Tang dynasty missed out on a strategic resource like Wuxia steel in his previous life. The conditions of these two Buddhist monks weren't something that anyone could easily satisfy. Wang Chong felt deeply troubled. But it was impossible for him to give up on Wuxia steel just like that. Am I just going to let those Arabs benefit from it? Wang Chong inwardly frowned. He knew that in the future, Arabia would become a thorn in the side of the Tang dynasty. If these people and a large amount of Hyderabad were to be given to them, it would be like adding wings to a tiger. More importantly, Wang Chong knew that this wasn't his imagination. It was a reality that had already happened in his previous life. If he could obtain a large amount of Hyderabad ore, not only would he be able to benefit from it, he would also be able to weaken the opponents of the Tang dynasty. No, the Arabs don't eat rice. Wang Chong suddenly thought of something. The Arabs didn't eat rice. What they ate was a type of large date palm. Further north, the grasslands of the Turkic Khaganate didn't grow any grain. But the monks of Hyderabad also sold their ores in these two places. Clearly, the grain that the Sindhi people understood was very different from the grain that the people of the Central Plains understood. One must know that Sindhu was currently in a state of famine. As long as it was food, why would they care so much about it? It was clear that if they didn't pay attention to this point, the negotiations might fall apart due to the Tang dynasty's grain control strategy. At this point, Wang Chong suddenly became excited. "Masters, how about apples, plows and the like?" Wang Chong suddenly asked. The two Buddhist monks were flabbergasted. However, he nodded slowly. They had investigated and found that the rice that the people of the Central Plains ate was very suitable for the Sindhi. If they could transport a large amount of this grain to Sindhu, that would be for the best. But if they couldn't, it would be the same even if they traded it for other food. After all, Sindhu was currently in a state of famine. Then what about bananas, millet and sorghum? Wang Chong asked excitedly. That's fine too. The two Buddhist monks glanced at each other and nodded. As long as it was food, why would they care so much about it? Ha ha. Then what about cows, sheep and camels? Wang Chong laughed heartily as he thought further into the future. Even though the Tang dynasty controlled grain, the cows and sheep on the plains weren't. In the territory of the Turks, there were large tracts of these livestock. If the Buddhist monks wanted a large amount of grain, they could bypass the Tang dynasty's policy and borrow the Turks to satisfy their needs. This was a very good way to change the situation. If there are cows and sheep, that would be even better. The two Buddhist monks said. Compared to apples and plows, which were hard to collect, grain like cows and sheep were much more popular. As long as it could resolve the famine in Sindhu, they didn't really care what it was. If Gongzi and the clan behind you are willing to accept this, we can continue our negotiations. The two Buddhist monks looked at Wang Chong with much more interest than before. What about the price? Wang Chong smiled. After coming to an agreement, the atmosphere between the two became much more relaxed. According to the price of your Central Plains, the Hyderabad ore is around 300 gold taels per June. The two said sincerely. 300 gold taels? Looking at the duo, Wang Chong was astonished. Why? You find it expensive? Seeing Wang Chong's expression, the faces of the two Sindhi monks darkened. 300 gold taels is our lowest price. We won't lower it. I thought that we could come to an agreement. If you can't accept this price, we can't work together anymore. It seems like you and your clan aren't our true partners. The attitude of the two Sindhi monks became much colder, a complete 180 degrees change from before. The price of 300 gold taels per June was the most suitable price they came up with after gathering together. The high priest had clearly stated that if the price was lower than this, they wouldn't be able to make a deal. The Hyderabad ore was different from ordinary iron ores, so it couldn't be sold at the price of ordinary iron ores. Before coming to the Central Plains, they had been to many other places and met many people. Among them, there were those who could speak Sanskrit fluently like Wang Chong. Back then, when they heard the price, they had the same reaction as Wang Chong. If they couldn't understand the true price of the Hyderabad ore like them, then it would be impossible for them to continue with the deal. Looks like the Central Plains isn't a suitable place for the Hyderabad ore. The two said coldly before turning around to leave. After spending a few months in the Tang dynasty, they had already determined that this place wasn't suitable for the Hyderabad ore. Based on their plan, they would return to Sindhu in a few days. When they first met Wang Chong, they thought that things would be different. But to think that the outcome would be the same, Wang Chong's reaction only made them even more certain of their initial judgment. The Central Plains was indeed not suitable for the Hyderabad ore. Wait a moment. Masters, you have misunderstood me. Seeing the two Buddhist monks turn around to leave, Wang Chong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He hurriedly beckoned for them to stop. Indeed, the price of the Hyderabad ore was indeed expensive, and it wasn't just an ordinary price, it was extremely expensive. If 300 gold taels were to be used to purchase other ores, he could probably buy dozens of carriages. To purchase ores at this price was definitely extravagant. However, with the memories of his previous life, Wang Chong knew that the price of the Hyderabad ore would reach tens of thousands, perhaps even hundreds of thousands of gold taels per June. Furthermore, it would be impossible to buy it even if one wanted to. What the two Buddhist monks didn't know was that it wasn't that Wang Chong found it expensive. On the contrary, Wang Chong was shocked by its low price. Compared to the astronomical prices of his previous life, The price of the Hyderabad ore was as cheap as cabbage. Wang Chong didn't expect the ore to be so cheap at the start. Of course, Wang Chong wouldn't be so foolish as to say it out loud. "Masters, I can accept the price of 300 gold taels per June," Wang Chong said simply. Hearing those words, the expressions of the two Buddhist monks calmed down and they stopped. Even though 300 gold taels per June isn't cheap, the June of our Sindhu is different from the June of your Central Plains. In the Central Plains, your June is only 30 June, but the June of our Sindhu is Great June. A June is 25 June. It is much larger than the June of your Central Plains. The Hyderabad ore in your hands is a June, one of the Buddhist monks said, as though trying to make Wang Chong feel better. Wang Chong smiled. Of course, he knew the difference between Sindhu and the Central Plains. However, the two Sindhu Buddhist monks were wrong on one point. A June of the Central Plains didn't even have 30 Jin. At most it was 25 to 26 Jin. From this point it could be said that the Sindhis were extremely honest. Furthermore, 50 Jin of the ore was 300 gold taels. In other words, 1 Jin was only 6 gold taels. Honestly speaking, this was really the price of a cabbage. He had really arrived at the peak of the market for Hyderabad ores. There's no problem with the price. Now we can talk about business, Wang Chong said. After satisfying the conditions of the Sindhu Buddhist monks, it was time for him to move on. As long as you can accept our conditions, everything else isn't a problem. How many June of ore do you want? The two Buddhist monks said. No, masters, you have misunderstood. Wang Chong stretched out a finger and shook it with a smile. I have come to talk to you with great sincerity. However, there is one thing you are mistaken about. What I want is not how many June of ores, not 1 June, not 2 June, not 100 June, not 1,000 June. What I want is to purchase the distribution rights of Hyderabad in the Central Plains, and even the entire Eastern world. Wang Chong threw out his conditions. What was the point of a single transaction? What was the point of buying 1 June, 2 June, or even 100 or 1,000 June of Hyderabad ore? Just a single batch of Hyderabad ore wasn't enough to form a powerful fighting force, nor was it able to increase the strength of the Tang dynasty. Wang Chong's ambitions were much greater. Chapter 21. No one knew better than Wang Chong just how intense the competition for the Hyderabad ores would be in the future. Tens of thousands for a June, hundreds of thousands for a June, and even higher prices were the result of intense competition. Not only in the east, even in the west, in the Abbasid Caliphate to the west of Sindhu, and even further away, the competition for the Hyderabad ores had reached an astonishing level. The prices there weren't any cheaper than the Tang dynasty. This was the reason why in his previous life, even though a Wuxia steel weapon was sold for hundreds of thousands of gold taels, the Tang dynasty was still unable to obtain the Hyderabad ores. This was because in the west, the Abbasid Caliphate was even more expensive than the Tang dynasty. There was a limit to the Hyderabad ores. By the time everyone realized this, the price of the Hyderabad ores would skyrocket. But now this was just the beginning. Even the Sindhi monks only viewed this ore as an excellent material for weapons. 300 gold taels for a June. This was an extremely rare opportunity for the Tang dynasty. No matter what, Wang Chong had to maximize the benefits for himself and the Tang dynasty. The distribution rights were the best way to solve this problem. Distribution rights? What is that? The two Sindhi monks stared at one another in bewilderment. They had been to many places and were knowledgeable. They had spent quite some time in the Tang dynasty, but this was the first time they had heard of the distribution rights. The distribution rights means that you will hand over the rights to sell the Hyderabad ores in the Central Plains and the entire Eastern world to me. And I will pay you a fixed sum of money. You don't need to sell any ores for this sum of money, and you'll be able to get a fixed sum of money from me every year. Of course, once you sell this right to me, from then on, you won't be able to sell it to anyone else. In fact, you won't even be able to send your men to sell the Hyderabad ores here. However, correspondingly, as the price for exercising this right, I guarantee that I will purchase a certain amount of Hyderabad ores from you every year. This will also guarantee your profits. Wang Chong smiled. In the world he transmigrated from, the general agency was a very common concept like what? General Agent of Greater East Asia. General Agent of China. General Agent of Central China. There were many more levels below, and they were all things that ordinary people were familiar with. This kind of thing was used in the automobile industry. The top was the general agent, and below that, the regional distributors were the so-called 4S stores. Although this was something that ordinary people were familiar with in another world, in this world it was undoubtedly a refreshing and novel experience. Wang Chong could feel that the two monks were looking at him with curiosity. Obviously, they had never heard of such a thing before. In other words, although we lost the right to send people to sell here, at the same time we can earn more money? Can we understand it that way? The two monks asked tentatively. Absolutely correct. Wang Chong laughed. It was easy to talk to smart people. I understand. The two monks finally caught up with Wang Chong's thoughts. But at the same time they had more doubts. But in this way, aren't you at a disadvantage? Disadvantage? Hearing the words of the duo, Wang Chong almost burst into laughter. These two monks were too cute. Disadvantage? He would make a deal that was disadvantageous? How was that possible? However, they were not to be blamed. In the world he came from, the sales agency was a common practice used by many businessmen. In order to compete for the agency of a product, many rich businessmen racked their brains and crazily bid for it. If the agency of something like Hyderabad ore was placed in the world he came from, it would probably be sold at a sky-high price. But here, in this world, the general sales agency was a very new concept. The two foreign monks did not understand, and they felt that he was at a disadvantage. Not at a disadvantage, not at a disadvantage. If you are still worried, we can sign a contract, and then the Supreme Court of the capital will record it and sign it. This way, even if I want to go back on my word, I can't. What do you think? Wang Chong smiled. The two monks fell silent. The Central Plains was tens of thousands of li away from Sindhu, and they were unfamiliar with the place and language barrier. It was truly difficult to sell the Hyderabad ore here. If someone were to help them sell the Hyderabad ore in the Central Plains, it wasn't impossible for them to sell the exclusive agency of the Central Plains to that person. Furthermore, they would be able to earn a sum of money. However, the Hyderabad ore concerned the countless starving people of Sindhu. The two of them shouldered a heavy responsibility, so they had to be careful. An oath to the gods. In Sindhu, once a promise was made, it had to be kept. It was the same even without a contract. The two of them had to consider it carefully. We can sell the exclusive agency of the Hyderabad ore to you, but you have to fulfill a condition of ours. After a moment of silence, the two monks suddenly said, "What condition?" Wang Chong was overjoyed. He thought that he would have to go through many twists and turns before he could agree to it. He didn't expect the two monks to agree so readily. The historical records were insufficient. Wang Chong had expected that the struggle for the exclusive agency of the Hyderabad ore wouldn't be easy, but he didn't expect it to be like this. The two monks didn't even have the authority to do so. However, if you can fulfill a condition of ours, we have a high chance of helping you obtain the exclusive agency from the high priests. The two monks solemnly said, "What condition do you want me to fulfill?" Wang Chong asked. "We brought a total of 300 junav ore this time. If you can sell all of this Hyderabad ore within a month and prove your ability to us, we can sell you the exclusive agency of the Hyderabad ore in the Central Plains, or even the entire East." The first Buddhist said seriously, "If you can't do it, then it will be very difficult for us to agree." The other Buddhist added, "Hiss." Wang Chong took in a deep breath and calmed himself down. He knew that changing history wasn't an easy task, and getting the Sindhi to give him the exclusive agency of the Hyderabad ore with just a few words was even more difficult. However, Wang Chong didn't expect the difficulty of this matter to be so great. 300 junav ore is equivalent to 90,000 gold taels. And it's only for a month. A grim expression appeared in Wang Chong's eyes. He had already realized that this matter wasn't as simple as he had imagined. To the current Wang Chong, 90,000 gold taels was an astronomical sum. Even if he emptied out the entire Wang clan, he still wouldn't be able to gather such a sum. Wang Chong felt that this matter was extremely thorny. A transaction of 90,000 gold taels was something that even 99% of the top magnates of the Tang dynasty wouldn't dare to easily accept. A month's time was too short. Only a genius would be able to do it. 300 June of Hyderabad ore isn't a small sum. How did they get so much ore? Sindhu is a long distance from the Central Plains, so how did they manage to transport it over? Wang Chong frowned as he felt that this matter was extremely thorny. This number was much larger than he had expected. Wang Chong had originally estimated that they would only have 50 June at most. But now 300 June. This number was too large. Does this have something to do with the famine in Sindhu? Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. 2 Buddhist monks had traveled tens of thousands of li to the Tang dynasty, yet they had brought 300 June of rare ore with them. Without a doubt, this was abnormal. It was clear that the famine in Sindhu was extremely severe, and they urgently needed a large amount of food. Otherwise, the 2 monks wouldn't have raised such a strange and nearly impossible request. The 1-month limit was probably related to this as well. This isn't good news. Wang Chong's brow deeply creased. If the problem in Sindhu was severe, it meant that the 2 monks had no other choice. In this aspect, they didn't have much of a choice. Wang Chong had originally wanted to ask if they could reduce this number, but from the looks of it, there wasn't much leeway. Gongzi, can you do it? The 2 Buddhist monks sternly asked. Although the 2 seemed calm, they were actually even more nervous than Wang Chong. The problem in Sindhu was far more severe than they had expected. In the past few days, they had already received several urging from the Sindhi high priest. If Wang Chong couldn't fulfill their request, their trip to the Central Plains would be a complete failure. I can. Wang Chong hesitated for a moment before nodding his head. 90,000 gold taels wasn't a small sum, but as long as one worked hard, it wasn't impossible. Moreover, how could one catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's lair? In his previous life, the Tang dynasty had missed out on the Hyderabad once, and in this life the Tang dynasty was the closest to success. No matter what price he had to pay, Wang Chong couldn't allow himself, much less the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains, to have this opportunity. If the 2 venerables have no problems, I hope that we can go to the Court of Judicial Review to file the matter. In this period of time, other than me, I hope that the 2 venerables will not come to any agreement regarding the Hyderabad or with anyone else. Wang Chong said. Of course. Of course. The 2 monks were overjoyed. Even they didn't think that Wang Chong would agree to such harsh conditions. But they didn't expect Wang Chong to agree in the end. It seems like we have underestimated Gongzi. I didn't think that Gongzi and the clan behind you would be so powerful. If Gongzi and your clan can help us complete this mission, you will become our true partner, and you will receive the respect of all of us Sindhu. The 2 Buddhist monks said excitedly. Ha ha ha, the 2 venerables are being too polite. Wang Chong laughed heartily. If the 2 monks were to know of his background, they probably wouldn't think so. Wang Chong had nothing to lose at this moment. After all, the barefooted did not fear those who wore shoes. Young Master Chong, someone seems to be following us. Just when Wang Chong was prepared to bring the 2 of them to the Court of Judicial Review, Shun Hai's low voice suddenly sounded by his ear. Oh! Wang Chong's heart jolted, and he abruptly recovered from his daze. Borrowing the opportunity to speak, Wang Chong discreetly tilted his shoulder in the direction of Shun Hai's hand signal. In an instant, his vision changed drastically. Shun Hai and Menglong were astonished by this move. Where did their young master learn such formidable means? This doesn't seem like something a 15-year-old child is capable of. As such, the 2 of them were unable to associate Wang Chong with the incompetent young Master Chong in their minds. Wang Chong didn't know the thoughts of the 2. From the corner of his eyes, Wang Chong could already see 2 furtive figures at the corner of the street behind him. It's the men from the Yao residence. Wang Chong's eyelids twitched. Shun Hai and Menglong weren't able to discern their origins, but Wang Chong could tell that they were Yao Feng's guards. Back then, the vast crane pavilion was filled with guards from the Yao residence. During the fight, Yao Feng summoned a huge group of people, and these 2 were among them. Chapter 22. Those fellows sure have quick reactions. Wang Chong frowned. The reaction of the Yao clan was much faster than he had expected. Those 2 have been following us ever since we left the house. However, we weren't certain then. But now we can be certain that they are coming for us. Menglong whispered into Wang Chong's ears with certainty. Wang Chong remained silent, but his heart was in turmoil. In the vast crane pavilion, he and his little sister had foiled Yao Guangyi's plans. Even though Wang Chong had tried his best to avoid arousing suspicion, Yao Guangyi was a crafty old fox. However, Yao Guangyi was a crafty old fox and he was extremely suspicious of others. Could it be that his actions in the vast crane pavilion had already aroused his suspicions? Was that the reason why he sent Yao Feng to follow him? If that was the case, then the situation was dire. Wang Chong didn't want to attract their attention at this moment. Masters, do you know how to read scriptures? Wang Chong suddenly turned around and asked the two Sindhi monks. Scriptures? The two monks were astonished. They didn't understand why Wang Chong would ask about this. However, they still answered honestly, I know a little about it. You must be joking. If Sindhi monks didn't know how to read scriptures, then there wouldn't be any monk in the world who knew how to read scriptures. Wang Chong's words were equivalent to asking whether a hen could lay eggs. Great, then can I invite the two masters to recite a portion of scriptures for me? Wang Chong clapped his hands and chuckled. The two Buddhist monks were baffled. They couldn't understand why Wang Chong would ask them to recite scriptures at this moment. However, after coming to an agreement regarding the Hyderabad ores, the two of them had a huge matter in mind. Reciting a portion of scriptures for Wang Chong was a small matter. Of course, the two of them agreed readily. The moment they finished speaking, they began to recite a portion of Sanskrit scriptures for Wang Chong. What is that lad doing? You must be joking. He went out early in the morning just to find these two monks to recite scriptures for him? When the sound of Sanskrit chanting echoed from the street ahead, the two Yao residence guards at the corner of the street stared at each other dumbfoundedly, feeling as though they were being played. Wang Chong left early in the morning and acted mysteriously. The two of them thought that he had found some important information. Who would have thought that after so long, they were actually looking for two Buddhist monks to chant scriptures for fun? This was too ridiculous. The two of them were completely unable to understand what was going on in the heads of these good-for-nothings. What did I say? I already said that this kid can't change his ways. Young master thinks too highly of him. What do you think? Am I right? Take a look for yourself. What about this brat is worth us wasting so much energy on? A good early morning has been wasted by this brat. The leader of the Yao residence guards had a belly full of resentment, and when he saw Wang Chong laughing in the distance, he was even more enraged. Well, you can't say that. Old Master and Gongzi must have their own thoughts. The other guard stuttered, his face full of awkwardness. Thoughts? Heh, are you talking about this? In my opinion, Old Master and Gongzi are making a mountain out of a molehill. He's just a child, how much of a storm can he stir up? The leader of the guard scoffed disdainfully. Besides, shouldn't we be following his little sister? Weren't you there at the vast crane pavilion as well? This lad is just a foil. The one who's truly formidable is his little sister. That's the real target we should be following. The other guard opened his mouth and wanted to retort, but he found that he was speechless. He could not say anything to refute at all. He could only say, "You're the Lord of the heavens. Let's wait a little longer. Perhaps we might discover something else." Wait, what else is there to wait for? Isn't it enough to waste an entire morning? Are we going to waste another afternoon? You can wait if you want, but I won't be accompanying you. The Scarface guard said impatiently. The other guard opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but he hesitated. Glancing into the distance, he saw that the two Buddhist monks had already finished their chanting. Wang Chong bowed and invited the two Buddhist monks into his carriage, which was heading in the direction of the Wang family residence. From the looks of it, he was intending to invite the two Buddhist monks to his residence to sing. Sigh. The second guard sighed and dispelled the thought in his mind. Forget it. Gongzi has said that we have to report any news immediately. Let's return to the residence and report the news. After which, the two of them turned around and left silently. Gongzi, they have left. On the carriage, Menglong lowered the curtain at the back of the carriage and turned to Wang Chong. He observed for a long time and confirmed that the two monks didn't follow them. Good. Let's head to the Court of Judicial Review now. Wang Chong smiled as though he had expected it. Nay. The horse neighed, and with a flick of its reins, the entire carriage turned around. At a crossroad, it abruptly turned into another path, heading in the direction of the Central Plains Court of Judicial Review. The Court of Judicial Review was the place in charge of all court cases and disputes over contracts. However, the most important function of this place was for the notarization and filing of contracts. Once a contract was notarized here, it would be extremely effective. It was equivalent to the endorsement of the entire Tang dynasty. As such, no matter which party to the contract, they wouldn't dare to violate it easily. To many merchants who were unfamiliar with the other party's background, it was the best choice for them to file their contracts in the Court of Judicial Review. In fact, many merchants from the Abbasid Caliphate, Western regions, Turkic Khaganate, Uzun, and Silla chose to file their contracts in the Court of Judicial Review as soon as they arrived. There were many wealthy merchants in the capital, and Wang Chong was afraid that an undue delay might cause trouble. Thus, he hurriedly dragged the two of them to the Court of Judicial Review. And to the two Sindhi Buddhist monks, the notarization of the Court of Judicial Review was an additional layer of protection. I finally succeeded. Wang Chong scanned the contract in his hands and walked out of the Court of Judicial Review. He felt much more at ease. Thank you so much, masters. Within a month, I will definitely pay you 300 junivores. But at the same time, I hope that you can keep your promise. Wang Chong turned around and said, Of course. By the gods, we Sindhi will never go back on our promises. Beneath a Chinese scholar tree by the side of the path, the two monks had a serious expression on their faces. When they first met, the two of them were a little repulsed by the young man before them. They didn't think that he was a suitable partner for them in the Central Plains. But after this trip, their impression of Wang Chong was completely different. This young man's thought process was completely different from that of an ordinary person. Even now, they were still a little confused about the so-called distribution rights. Furthermore, his identity seemed to be much more noble than they had imagined. The two of them had already sensed this in the Court of Judicial Review. But no matter what, this was good news for the sales of the Hyderabad ores in the Tang dynasty. Masters, let's part ways here. If there's anything, we will contact you again. Wang Chong looked at the two of them and said, The two foreign monks nodded their heads and walked away with widened strides. Seeing the two of them disappear in another direction, Wang Chong slowly retracted his gaze. Now, I have to think of a way to get the 90,000 gold taels. Wang Chong muttered to himself. Even though he managed to obtain the dealership rights for the Hyderabad ores from the two Sindhi monks, the real headache was about to come. 90,000 gold taels wasn't a small sum. Wang Chong only had a monthly allowance of a few silver ingots. If he were to use his monthly allowance to repay the debt, it would be impossible for Wang Chong to gather the sum in his entire life. What a headache! I should return first. Wang Chong patted his head and walked back to his carriage. Rumble, rumble. The rumbling of a carriage sounded. Just as Wang Chong took a few steps, his vision blurred. A bronze carriage suddenly appeared in front of him, right in between him and his carriage. Taken aback, Wang Chong subconsciously raised his head. There was a familiar bronze flower on the carriage that immediately caught his eye. Seeing this bronze flower, Wang Chong felt as though he was slapped in the face and his face paled. Not good. Wang Chong's face darkened. He wanted to turn around and escape, but it was already too late. A white jade-like arm stretched out from the gap of the carriage like a spirit snake. The speed of this arm didn't seem fast, but even with Wang Chong's ability, he was still unable to dodge it. In just an instant, his ear was viciously grabbed. Little brat, you still want to escape after seeing your sister? From the elegant carriage, a haughty voice of a lady sounded gleeful, as though she was extremely proud of herself for grabbing Wang Chong's ear. My dear cousin, stop grabbing, stop grabbing. I won't run anymore, I won't run anymore. Being grabbed by the jade-like fingers, Wang Chong's ear turned red as though it was on fire, causing him to groan in pain. What did you call me? The lady in the carriage harumphed in dissatisfaction. Indistinctly, one could even hear the sound of giggling, as though there was more than one person in the carriage. I was wrong. Second sister, second sister. Seeing that the wind was blowing, Wang Chong quickly changed his words. Without his little sister to protect him, Shen Hai and Meng Long were definitely not a match for his second sister. In fact, even if his little sister was here, she wouldn't dare to make a move on his second sister. The biggest possibility was that he would stick to her body with a face full of admiration, calling out second sister non-stop. That's more like it. In the carriage, the lady nodded her head in satisfaction. With a flick of her finger, the carriage door opened and Wang Chong felt as though he was a kite being lifted into the carriage. It was as though he had entered another world. Wang Chong's eyes were filled with red. There's no need for the two of you to wait any longer. I'll be bringing that lad Wang Chong. In the blink of an eye, the lady's bossy voice sounded before Shen Hai and Meng Long. After which, the carriage rumbled as it continued on its way. Wang Chong calmed himself down and only then did he notice that he had entered another carriage. It was a huge carriage with red and pink hues. It was clearly a womanly carriage. The carpet was red and in front of him, Wang Chong saw a well-endowed and dignified young beauty who looked to be around 24 to 25 years old. Her head was lowered as she trimmed her red nails. Next to her, a graceful woman in red clothes covered her jade-like fingers and giggled as she looked at her. Wang Chong didn't recognize the lady beside him, but he felt awkward being stared at and giggled at. "Second sister, you're looking for me?" Wang Chong looked at the young beauty who was trimming her nails and braced himself to ask. This person was his cousin. This cousin of his was the kind of person who couldn't help but feel as though she was a big sister to anyone who laid eyes on her, and they couldn't help but want to get close to her. However, Wang Chong wasn't one of them. Unlike others, as long as he saw this big sister, Wang Chong couldn't help but feel fear and have the urge to run away. In this world, there weren't many women who could strike fear into Wang Chong's heart. Yet, this cousin of his was one of them. During the period when Wang Chong was at his most rebellious, even his mother couldn't control him. Yet, before this cousin of his, Wang Chong was like a monkey in the palm of the Buddha, unable to do anything at all. In the Central Plains, when a prestigious clan's authority reached its pinnacle, they would seek to expand their population. This was the same for the Wang clan. Putting aside the siblings born from the same mother, the children of those uncles and aunts were already plenty. Chapter 23. Even though she was a lady, this cousin of his was known to be a woman not inferior to a man. Her martial arts were fearsome. Wang Chong had never been able to last more than 3 moves against her. Since he was unable to defeat her, he could only escape. Yet, this cousin of his was skilled in making friends all over the world. She had countless close friends all over the capital. No matter where Wang Chong ran to, he wouldn't be able to escape the eyes and ears of those close friends of hers. More importantly, Wang Chong still didn't know which lady was buying rouge by the side of the road was his close friend. Worst of all, this cousin of his loved to meddle in other people's business, especially his. Based on what she said, she had always wanted a younger brother at home, but it was a pity that big uncle and big aunt didn't agree to her wishes. Thus, his cousin liked to treat him as his younger brother. In any case, they shared the same surname Wang and shared the same grandfather. Furthermore, she didn't like him calling her cousin. Instead, she called her second sister, as though the both of them were born from the same mother. Every time Wang Chong saw her, his head would swell. When Wang Chong was rebellious with his bad friends, he had been stopped by her many times. Along the way, he had been picked up like a monkey, and he had lost all his face. He couldn't defeat her in a fight, nor could he escape from her. Furthermore, she was his cousin, so Wang Chong could only give in obediently. "Why? I can't look for you if there's nothing?" Wang Zhuyan lifted her head upon hearing those words, and her gaze was hostile. Upon seeing her threatening gaze, Wang Chong's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly waved his hands. No, there's nothing. However, he was certain that this second sister of his wouldn't visit him without a reason. Since she was waiting for him outside the Court of Judicial Review, she must be looking for him for something. Only then did Wang Zhuyan retract her gaze in satisfaction. She lowered her head and continued trimming her nails silently. Since his cousin wasn't speaking, Wang Chong didn't dare to start a conversation. He sat there obediently, waiting for her to bring it up herself. "I heard that you've grown up in the past 2 days. You even went to the vast crane pavilion to teach Yao Feng of the Yao clan a lesson." Wang Zhuyan mocked as she trimmed her nails. Before Wang Chong could answer, a pair of eyes looked over. It was the woman in red next to him. She looked at Wang Chong in surprise, as if she was seeing him for the first time. "What are you talking about, second sister?" that Yao Feng suffered in the hands of my big brother and second brother, but he was unable to defeat them. Thus he made use of a hooligan like Ma Zhou to deal with me. I was infuriated as well, so I barged into the vast crane pavilion to look for him. It's just a small conflict, it's nothing much. Wang Chong gritted his teeth and said. His heart was also numb. He knew that yesterday's matter wouldn't end so easily. Although the ones fighting were their juniors, it was the Yao and Wang families that were involved in it. Not to mention that the old man of the Yao clan had actually used this as a pretext to make a fuss, bringing this matter to the imperial court and reporting it to the emperor. In the Tang dynasty, the Yao and Wang clan were towering trees. Their disciples and acquaintances could be found all over the world. This matter had implicated countless prestigious clans, and attracted a lot of attention. A huge uproar had already been stirred up in the royal court. If not for this, Big Uncle wouldn't have been so furious as to come knocking on his door yesterday to denounce him. But Wang Chong knew that this was only the beginning. His cousin Wang Zhuyan had already come personally to stop him and interrogate him for a confession. But Wang Chong knew that this was just a drizzle. In the future, there would only be more people looking for him. A small conflict? You sure know how to talk. Wang Zhuyan lifted her head to look at Wang Chong and sneered coldly. That Yao Feng was beaten black and blue by you. And the old master of the Yao clan even reported our family to the Holy Emperor. Yet you say that it's a small conflict? Is this a small conflict? Second sister, I'm really wronged. Wang Chong cried out indignantly. Think about it. How old is Yao Feng and how old am I? With that little bit of martial arts of mine, how could I possibly beat him up? Isn't this a joke? If I really had such an ability, would I have been dragged into the carriage by you, second sister, with just one hand? The red-robed lady by the side nodded her head. She could tell that Wang Chong's martial arts weren't too profound. Putting aside Yao Feng, even the guards of the Yao residence were much stronger than him. Besides, Yao Guangyi is there, and his guards are all over the place. No matter how you put it, whether it's good or bad, isn't it still up to them? Wang Chong continued with an aggrieved expression. In my view, everyone knows that the Yao clan is a schemer. They probably knew that I was heading over and intentionally waited there to frame me. I was just infuriated, so I barged in and flipped Yao Feng's table, saying that I flattered him. Isn't that just making things up? Really? Wang Zhuyan finally lifted her head and stared at Wang Chong. Clearly, she was starting to believe his words. Of course it's true. Second sister, others might not know how capable I am. How can you possibly not know? All I do is carry the birdcage and fight with the dogs every day. Where would I find the time to cultivate? How could I possibly be a match for a martial arts genius like Yao Feng? Wang Chong said. This wasn't entirely wrong. The one who made a move was the Wang family's little sister, and Wang Chong didn't do anything at all. You're right. That Yao Feng has always been an outstanding talent amongst his peers in the capital. Just based on what you've done, it's impossible for you to deal with Yao Feng with that bit of capability of yours. Wang Zhuyan pondered for a moment before nodding her head, acknowledging his words. All right. You've passed this test. The nail brush you gave me previously isn't bad, and it's quite useful. Do you have any other good stuff? Wang Chong looked at the nail file in Wang Zhuyan's hands that he had made for her previously and rolled his eyes. Did his cousin really think that he was Doraemon's pocket that could never be emptied or used up? How long had it been since he made this nail brush? Wasn't she being too greedy? What? Wait a moment. Zhuyan, you said that this unique nail brush in the capital was invented by cousin? Before Wang Chong could say a word, the red-robed lady seated beside Wang Zhuyan couldn't hold back her curiosity any longer. She stared at Wang Chong in astonishment. That's right. Why, little hussy, you want to be an old cow eating young grass? Have you taken a fancy to my little brother? Wang Zhuyan said with disdain. Lass, nothing good comes out of a filthy mouth. How am I old? The red-robed lady scolded jokingly. As she spoke, she couldn't help but giggle. Don't give me that. Do you think that I don't know that you've been eyeing the nail brush in my hands the entire time? Forget it, I'll let you have it. Take it. Wang Zhuyan rolled her eyes and with a flick of her wrist, she tossed the nail brush to the red-robed lady. Thank you, Sister Zhuyan, for your reward. The latter chuckled, not minding the matter at all. She snatched the nail brush as though it was a treasure. The nail brush in Wang Zhuyan's hands wasn't a top-notch sword, nor was it able to raise one's cultivation. To a man it wasn't worth a single coin. However, her sisters had been eyeing it intensely. To think that it would end up in her hands. Thinking of this, the red-robed lady's face lit up and she kept the nail brush tightly in her bosom. Since you know that I've already rewarded you, why aren't you getting off the carriage? Do you want me to reward this little cousin of mine to you as well? Wang Zhuyan said impatiently. That's a good idea. I couldn't ask for more. The red-robed lady chuckled as she glanced at Wang Chong's face seductively. However, she still opened the carriage door and walked out leisurely. She had already arrived at her destination. Wang Zhuyan was just giving her a lift. Second sister, who's that lady? Wang Chong glanced in the direction where the red-robed lady left and he couldn't take it anymore. His second sister's best friends were all hotter and more avant-garde than the last. Before the red-robed lady left, her eyes were filled with reluctance. It was as though she wanted to dig 2 pieces of flesh out of his body. She's the daughter of the Duke of Yu. Why are you eyeing her? Wang Zhuyan sneered. How can that be? Second sister, I did a pretty good job with my acting, right? Wang Chong chuckled. Wang Zhuyan suddenly fell silent. She stared at Wang Chong for a few seconds before her expression turned cold. Peng, she closed the carriage door and grabbed Wang Chong's ear. She seemed to have become a completely different person. You brat! Do you know how much trouble you have caused? Don't tell me that you appeared in the vast crane pavilion by chance. Don't tell me that you and Yao Feng were together because of Ma Zhou. I don't want to hear that. If I were to find out that you had caused such a huge trouble for your family because of your foolishness, I will break your legs first. Wang Zhuyan stared at Wang Chong with an incomparably cold expression, as though she was looking at a stranger. Despite knowing her for so long, this was the first time Wang Chong saw her so stern and angry. Other than the 2 of them, there was no one else in the carriage. Wang Chong hesitated for a moment before revealing the truth. Second sister, do you trust me? Wang Chong sat up straight and asked with a serious expression. If I didn't trust you, I wouldn't have brought the daughter of the Duke of Yu here to be your witness and clean up your mess. Wang Zhuyan said coldly. Her expression didn't improve in the slightest. Fine. I'll speak. I intentionally snuck into the vast crane pavilion. I was also the one who instructed my little sister to beat up Yao Feng. Even the meeting between Yao Guangyi and my father was intentionally disrupted by me. Everything was carefully planned by me. Wang Chong said seriously. Why? Wang Zhuyan was perplexed. She couldn't understand why Wang Chong would do such a thing. The Yao clan harbors ill intentions towards our Wang clan. I can't allow them to succeed. I'm unable to explain this matter in detail, but you will understand after a period of time. Wang Chong said seriously. What? Wang Zhuyan's expression changed and she asked gravely. Are you certain about this? Wang Chong nodded his head seriously. All right. I trust you on this matter. Wang Zhuyan's expression fluctuated, but she didn't pursue the matter any further. You aren't going to ask? Wang Chong was surprised. There's no need for that. Wang Zhuyan smiled and waved her hands. Her expression became much better. You might be a little mischievous, but that's all. We are a family. I believe that no matter what, you won't harm your own family. Second sister, Wang Chong looked at his cousin Wang Zhuyan and he felt touched. Even though he was mischievous, and even though he had caused a lot of trouble, he had never thought of harming this clan. The only one who could understand this was his cousin, Wang Zhuyan. Even though this cousin of his had stopped him outside many times, she only reprimanded him a little and eventually allowed him to go. This time, the matter with Yao Feng was reported to the Holy Emperor by the old master Yao of the Yao clan. Everyone in the Wang clan was implicated, causing a huge uproar in the capital. But for such an important matter, his cousin didn't ask anything and just trusted him with one sentence. For a moment, Wang Chong didn't know what to say. In the past few days, the clan has been in chaos. Not to mention my father, even eldest aunt, eldest uncle, youngest uncle, and a few of your cousins are all hopping about in a rage. They've been infuriated by you. All I did was stand up for them. Even if I didn't appear, they would still come looking for you. Wang Zhuyan said with a solemn expression. The daughter of the Duke of Yu is skilled in the art of politics. With her in the capital, The matter regarding you will be resolved. This is also the reason why I pulled her over to look for you. As for eldest aunt and eldest uncle, I'll tell them what you've said today. As long as you're certain that the matter between you and Yao Feng isn't a personal grudge, no matter what, I'll find a way to cover it up for you. Second sister, thank you. Wang Chong expressed his gratitude. Cousin Wang Zhuyan had a close relationship with Big Aunt and Uncle. Big Aunt had always thought that Cousin Wang Zhuyan was a person of her own will, and respected her opinion. Chapter 24. It's too early for you to be happy. Little uncle is at the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, and I can't answer to him. He is currently tied up with military affairs and can't come down. However, you have to be prepared for it. Wang Zhuyan said. Wang Chong felt a headache coming on. This was the root of the clan's prosperity. If something were to happen, all parties would come looking for trouble. I'll think of a way myself, Wang Chong said. He felt troubled. It was all his fault for his vile image as a profligate scion. Even though this matter was related to Wang Chong for the sake of his clan, little uncle and the others wouldn't know of it. Unlike his cousin and the others, they wouldn't trust him completely. However, it was fortunate that this matter could be dragged on. As long as the truth was revealed, everything would be fine. Wang Zhuyan nodded her head and didn't ask any further. Right, what's with the two Buddhist fellows who walked out of the Court of Judicial Review with you? Wang Zhuyan suddenly recalled something. She stared at Wang Chong warily. It can't be that you caused trouble in your clan again? No, that's definitely not the case. Hearing Wang Zhuyan mention this matter, Wang Chong hugged his head and leaned against the wall of the carriage, relaxing his entire body. He was intending to look for his cousin regarding this matter. Now that she was asking about it, it was even better. No, why did you bring them to the Court of Judicial Review? The more Wang Zhuyan thought about it, the more she felt that something was amiss. What kind of place was the Court of Judicial Review? It was a place where people dealt with cases. Who would come to such a place if there was nothing important? Could it be that this lad had returned to his old ways and caused trouble again after the matter with the Yao clan had not been resolved? At this point, Wang Zhuyan looked at Wang Chong as though she was facing a formidable foe. Actually, it's nothing much. That's right, I owe them some money. Wang Chong chuckled. Is it really just some money? Wang Zhuyan asked doubtfully. It's true. Wang Chong said seriously. Who? Hearing that it was just a debt, Wang Zhuyan exhaled deeply. How much? 10 taels or 20 taels? As he spoke, he took out a silver ingot from his sleeve. I'm afraid it's not enough. Wang Chong was a little embarrassed. How much? Don't tell me you owe him a tael of gold? Wang Zhuyan exclaimed in shock, but she still lifted the cover of her seat and took out a golden leaf. Wang Zhuyan's father was the eldest son of the Wang clan. Compared to Wang Chong's father, Wang Yan, he was slightly wealthier. Wang Chong shook his head again. Don't tell me you owe him 10 taels of gold? 100 taels. Wang Chong. Don't tell me you owe him 1,000 taels of gold. At the end of her words, Wang Zhuyan gritted her teeth and lost her composure. 1,000 gold taels would probably bankrupt the entire Wang clan. Even if they were to plunder all of their assets, they wouldn't be able to come up with such a sum for Wang Chong. None of them. It's 90,000 gold taels. Wang Chong shook his head. Stretching out his palms, he made an earth-shattering gesture. What? Wang Zhuyan's body trembled. Her face paled at the figure Wang Chong spoke of. When Wang Chong got into trouble at the vast crane pavilion and was reported to the Holy Emperor by the old master of the Yao clan, she was only displeased and a little angry. However, upon hearing that Wang Chong owed the other party 90,000 gold taels of money, she lost her composure in shock. Even if she sold off the entire Wang clan, she wouldn't be able to gather such a sum. Probably wouldn't even amount to a fraction of it. Haha, second sister, I was just lying to you. Look at how frightened you are. How could I possibly owe him so much money? Just as Wang Zhuyan's face turned frosty and she was about to lash out at him, Wang Chong suddenly stood up and chuckled. Are you joking with me? Wang Zhuyan was taken aback. That means that you don't owe him that much? Of course not. Wang Chong chuckled as he shrugged. You brat. You better not, otherwise I'll kill you. Wang Zhuyan threatened fiercely. but she felt a weight lifted off her heart. This lad gave her a scare. To think that he really thought that he owed the other party so much money. However, there's something that I would like second sister to help me with. Those two Buddhist monks want to forge some ores, but they aren't familiar with the area. Seeing that there's a profit to be made, I would like to earn some profit. Second sister, you have a wide circle of friends, so can you introduce a better weaponsmithing master to me? Wang Chong chuckled. Weaponsmithing master was a unique occupation in this world. The strength, agility, and strength inscriptions they imbued into their weapons could enhance the might of the weapon. These weaponsmithing masters had high standing, and it was impossible for ordinary people to invite them over. Thus, Wang Chong could only trouble his cousin, Wang Zhuyan. However, he couldn't tell her about this. You brought those two Buddhist monks to the Court of Judicial Review for this matter? Wang Zhuyan widened her eyes. What else did you think it was for? Wang Chong chuckled and asked. If that's the case, then it's not a problem. Your second sister still has some connections. Wang Zhuyan paused for a moment and stared at Wang Chong in astonishment. Brat, I really couldn't tell that you would be able to find connections with these Buddhist monks after fooling around outside all day long. She didn't object to Wang Chong wanting to earn some extra income. At the very least, this lad had improved. Hee second sister, I'll leave this favor to you then. You get busy, I won't disturb you any further. Wang Chong said with a cheeky smile. Opening the carriage door, he leaped down amidst his cousin's scolding laughter. Brat, grow up and don't cause any more trouble for me. From afar, cousin Wang Zhuyan's voice could be heard from the carriage. I got it. Standing on the street with his back facing the carriage, Wang Chong waved his hands without turning back. Only after his cousin's carriage gradually disappeared into the distance did Wang Chong retract his gaze. Kachacha. He stretched his neck and a bright glint shone in his eyes. Looks like I have to be more cautious about this matter. Cousin has always been a bold person, but just a little bit of information from him already scared her out of her wits. If I were to tell him that it's true, and a case has been filed in the Court of Judicial Review, he wouldn't be able to deny it. Wouldn't I be doomed then? Wang Chong thought. Initially, Wang Chong was prepared to tell his cousin about the 90,000 gold taels. However, it was fortunate that he changed his mind and changed his words. Otherwise, he would be in deep trouble once more. After stretching his arms and legs, Wang Chong's eyes turned, and he quickly strode toward the carriage under a lush scholar tree nearby. Young master. The door of the carriage opened and two familiar faces peeked out. They were Shanhai and Minglong. When Wang Zhuyan intercepted Wang Chong at the entrance of the Court of Judicial Review, she had told him that she wanted the both of them to return. However, from the looks of it, not only did the both of them not return, they even followed behind silently. Wang Chong nodded his head, as though he wasn't surprised by the appearance of the both of them. Let's go to the Eight Gods Pavilion. After which, Wang Chong leaped onto the carriage. Previously, when he was in his cousin's carriage, he suddenly understood some problems. Wang Chong suddenly knew where he should go to gather 920,000 gold taels. Jaya! With a flick of the whip, the carriage turned and entered a path completely different from Wang Zhuyan's, heading toward the Eight Gods Pavilion. The Eight Gods Pavilion was grand and majestic. The vast crane pavilion couldn't be compared to it. To the commoners in the capital, it was an existence that they could only look up to. The reason was simple. The Eight Gods Pavilion wasn't open to the public. In the Tang dynasty, only the scions of the nobles were able to enter. It was a place where the scions of the prestigious clans in the capital would walk their dogs, fight cocks, fool around, and enjoy themselves. It was said that even the princes and princesses of the royal family would occasionally appear here. The hierarchy in the Eight Gods Pavilion was strict and there were many rules. Even though they were all teenagers or youngsters, they were divided into many different circles based on their social status. People from one circle looked at people from another circle with arrogance and haughtiness. Wang Chong was influenced by the other world and Wang Chong didn't like this. Thus, in his previous life, Wang Chong didn't go there anymore after visiting a few times. He didn't want to interact with these people either. The reason why Wang Chong hung out with Ma Zhou and the others was because of this mindset. However, it was different this time. 90,000 gold taels wasn't a small sum. If Wang Chong wanted to raise funds to obtain the rights to sell the ores in Hyderabad, There was no better target than the princesses and young masters in the Eight Gods Pavilion. "Young Master Chong, we've arrived." Just when he was in a daze, Shun Hai's voice suddenly sounded by his ears. Wang Chong was taken aback. When he recovered from his daze, he realized that the carriage had already stopped. "Wait here, I'll go down first." Wang Chong pushed open the door, and the moment he stepped down from the carriage, a commotion immediately gushed in like a flood. "We've arrived at the Eight Gods Pavilion." Wang Chong raised his head and immediately saw a purple-red building that towered like a mountain. Rather than saying that it was a building, it was actually many buildings that formed a huge courtyard. The eaves of the courtyard were arched and the eaves were high, giving it an imposing appearance. This was the Eight Gods Pavilion. Wang Chong swept his gaze across the area and saw the hundreds of luxurious carriages in front of the Eight Gods Pavilion. These carriages were extremely extravagant, and they were lined up in an orderly formation as though an army. It was a majestic sight to behold. Wang Chong knew that every single one of these carriages represented a prestigious clan in the Tang dynasty. This wasn't the first time he had seen these carriages, but this time around, it felt extremely different. "This is all money." Wang Chong laughed heartily as he walked forward. Before Zhang Xian could even get close to the Eight Gods Pavilion, a commotion immediately gushed in like a flood. Listening carefully, one could discern the sounds of shouting, drinking orders, dogfighting, bird-teasing, scolding. The entire place was bustling with activity. Wang Chong flashed his token and passed through the entrance and corridors of the Eight Gods Pavilion. Following a set of stairs, he headed straight for the third floor. Wang Chong's footsteps were swift and he didn't attract the attention of others. "I'm here." With a faint smile, Wang Chong stepped onto the third floor. There was a huge crowd in front of him, and many exquisite round tables were spread all over the third floor. This was the place where the scions of the prestigious clans of the Eight Gods Pavilion chatted, drank, and had fun. A large group of people were gathered here, chatting and gossiping about girls. That fellow youngster Wei should be there. Wang Chong smiled as he followed the gazes of the crowd toward the southeast corner of the third floor. There was a huge crowd there and cheers could be heard everywhere, attracting everyone's attention. Wang Chong parted the crowd and squeezed his way over. At the southeast corner of the third floor of the Eight Gods Pavilion, Wang Chong saw a stage that was intentionally surrounded by railings. On the stage, two young men dressed in embroidered robes were currently engaged in an intense battle. One of them was a round-faced young man who was around the same age as Wang Chong. On the other hand, the other was clearly much older, around 16 to 17 years old. Furthermore, his martial arts were much higher as well. Every time he made a move, he would be able to send the round-faced young man flying, attracting the cheers of the entire hall. On the other hand, even though the round-faced young man was weaker, he was exceptionally courageous. Even though he was sent flying time and time again, his courage didn't diminish in the slightest. "This lad hasn't changed at all." Looking at the round-faced young man, Wang Chong chuckled in his heart. The chubby young man who was teased time and time again was naturally Wei Hao, youngster Wei. Wei Hao was his real name while youngster was his nickname. "If I didn't appear, you would have to munch on radishes for 2 months. Chapter 25. Youngster Wei was the son of the Duke of Wei, as well as Wang Chong's childhood friend. Youngster Wei was the son of the Duke of Wei, as well as Wang Chong's childhood friend. This lad's aptitude was ordinary. While others could learn a set of horse stance and bow fist in a single glance, this lad needed 3 days to learn it. With such poor aptitude, others would have long given up on martial arts. However, this lad was born with a stubborn temper. The more he couldn't do something, the more he wanted to do it. Not only so, despite his poor aptitude, not only did he enjoy sparring with others, he even liked to challenge others to a duel on the dueling ring. The Duke of Wei was skilled in business, and he was also a wealthy man. However, youngster Wei, who only had a monthly allowance of several gold taels, ended up being the same as someone like Wang Chong. Putting aside the fact that he was short of money every month, when he drank with Wang Chong would even have to pay for it at times. Wang Chong was completely speechless. If nothing unexpected happened, this lad was about to fall into someone's trap and suffer a huge setback in the Eight Gods Pavilion. Even though this lad had lost in the past, he had never lost so badly. He had lost so much that he even lost his underwear. Furthermore, youngster Wei couldn't let his family know of this. Thus, in order to return the money, this lad had no choice but to tighten his belt and munch on radishes for 6 months. The reason why Wang Chong remembered this matter was because youngster Wei had mentioned it to him more than once in his previous life. Every time, he looked miserable and unbearable, as if he had been trampled by an elephant. Based on the timing, the lad's loss happened to be today. Youngster Wei, don't say that I didn't save you. Wang Chong sneered in his heart. Wang Chong wasn't in a hurry to make a move. Youngster Wei's addiction to blindly betting was incurable. Although he had been tricked and provoked this time, it was still his own fault. If he hadn't agreed to it, nothing would have happened. Wang Chong had to teach him a lesson no matter what. Wang Chong looked at the dueling ring. The 16 to 17-year-old young man was giggling, clearly teasing youngster Wei. With his strength, he could have ended the battle a long time ago. However, he deliberately humiliated him in this way in front of everyone. Each time youngster Wei was sent flying in a pathetic manner, it would cause the surrounding crowd to burst into laughter. Since you're so arrogant, you can't blame anyone else. You asked for it. Wang Chong looked at the 16 or 17-year-old tall youth. Seeing that the time was right, he immediately made his move. Youngster Wei, cross your elbows in the horse stance. Young Sparrow Hawk somersault. Wang Chong's voice was mixed in the crowd, neither loud nor soft. However, when youngster Wei heard it, his entire body quivered. He seemed to uncontrollably execute Wang Chong's moves, coiling his legs and grabbing onto the ground. Just as that 16 or 17-year-old tall youth was about to send a cloud handover, youngster Wei suddenly did a backflip and sent a ferocious kick at that tall youth's face. Bang! The tall young man was kicked, and his whole body flew out. He flipped 6 to 7 feet away and lay on the ground. His whole body was stuffy. Wang! The air in the entire third floor of the Eight Gods Pavilion seemed to have been sucked dry. The noisy crowd suddenly fell silent. Looking at the tall young man who was suddenly sent flying, none of them could say a word. Who is it? Who dares to spout nonsense? Sprawled on the ground, the tall young man flew into a rage. His eyes swept across the surroundings viciously. The surroundings were silent, and no one spoke a word. Gao Fei. What nonsense are you spouting? If you can fight, then get up. If you can't, then hurry up and kowtow to me and admit defeat. On the other side, youngster Wei was overjoyed. He knew who that voice belonged to. In that instant, he instinctively followed the other party's instructions and waved his hands. He didn't expect that the effects would be far beyond his expectations. He really loved that bastard who was giving him pointers behind his back. Don't get gleeful. If not for a moment of carelessness, do you think that you would be able to defeat me with that lousy martial arts of yours? The young man named Gao Fei flew into a rage. Pushing against the ground with his hands, he leaped up from the ground and pounced toward youngster Wei like a cheetah. Boom! The air exploded and a massive shadow of a fist pierced through space like a whip, smashing toward youngster Wei. He had executed the full-arm fist. Gao Fei clearly felt humiliated after being sent flying by youngster Wei in a single move. Thus he finally unleashed his true strength out of hatred. Not good. Youngster Wei's face paled and every single strand of hair on his body stood on end. The martial arts that Gao Fei executed were much more formidable than before. Coiling roots of an old tree, azure dragon crouching on the bridge, steel chains traversing the river. Wang Chong faintly smiled. From behind he could see everything clearly and immediately gave 3 pointers. These 3 pointers were all moves that youngster Wei had practiced to the point of familiarity. Boom! In the first move, youngster Wei's body bent down and coiled up like the roots of an old tree. At almost the same instant that he bent down, a heavy fist brushed past his hair. In fact, youngster Wei could even feel his scalp going numb. Boom! In the second move, when Gao Fei changed his move and punched out with a tremendous force, youngster Wei's body turned as limp as a noodle. Bending backward, he was like a green dragon lying on a bridge, dodging the attack once more. It's my turn. Youngster Wei's eyes lit up. Without needing Wang Chong's pointers, he roared and his body bounced up like a bent bamboo, executing the steel chains traversing the river. Boom! This punch landed on Gao Fei's chest. Youngster Wei had exerted all of his strength, and Gao Fei's face turned from white to red. With a boom, he was sent flying like a cannonball, smashing through a railing and a few round tables before slamming heavily onto the ground. Ha ha, I've won. I've struck it rich this time. Gao Fei, you bastard, and all of you bastards. To think that you would bet on me losing. I'll make you lose so badly that even your underwear will fall off. Youngster Wei looked at Gao Fei, who was sent flying, and shouted excitedly. That single sentence caused half of the 8 gods' pavilion to fall silent. Their eyes were filled with resentment as they stared at Gao Fei. Gao Fei, you trash. To think that you can't even defeat a mere Wei Hao. You made me lose so much money. Don't come to the 8 gods' pavilion ever again. If I see you again, I'll find a few people to beat you up. Pooey. How unlucky. The surrounding profligate scions who had lost started cursing. In the 8 gods' pavilion, Wei Hao was the god of fortune. As long as it was a duel that he attended, everyone would be able to earn some money. The stakes for this duel were huge, and Wei Hao thought that he would be able to earn some money. To think that Gao Fei would be so useless that he actually lost. Wei Hao didn't bother about Gao Fei, who was being scolded. Turning around, he opened his arms and dashed toward Wang Chong. Ha ha ha, good brother. You've finally come to the 8 gods' pavilion to look for me. Wei Hao was overjoyed. He hugged Wang Chong tightly and burst into laughter. You're really my good brother. You've really helped me greatly this time. Otherwise, I would have lost miserably. Since you know, you should gamble less next time. At the very least, you should see who your opponent is. That fellow is much more formidable than you. Wang Chong reprimanded jokingly. That won't do. I've been dueling since I was 5. If you want me to give up on dueling, I'd rather lose some money and munch on carrots every day. Wei Hao chuckled. Wang Chong was speechless. He could only shake his head. Wait a moment. Wei Hao, this doesn't count. Suddenly a loud shout sounded. Gao Fei, who had been berated by the other scions, stood up and shouted anxiously in the direction of Wei Hao and Wang Chong. Why, Gao Fei, are you going back on your words? Hearing the shout, Wei Hao's eyebrows shot up. He turned around with a displeased expression. Who helped you just now? Wei Hao, you went against the rules of the competition and asked for help. Damn it, who was the one who spoke just now? Come out now. Gao Fei shouted loudly, his face filled with unwillingness. If it wasn't for that bastard hiding in the crowd helping him, how could Wei Hao win against him? Are you looking for me? Hearing this, Wang Chong smiled and walked out from the crowd. Seeing Wang Chong walking out from the crowd, Gao Fei's pupils shrank. A fierce glint flashed across his eyes. But before he could get angry, Wei Hao had already welcomed him with a big smile. Ha ha, kid. I knew it was you. Wei Hao walked over and hugged Wang Chong. Gao Fei, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Which eye of yours saw that I broke the rules? Did I find someone to fight with you? Or did my brother go up the stage? Right, let me tell you, this isn't anyone. This is my good brother Wang Chong. Wei Hao turned around, looked at Gao Fei and the crowd and said proudly, Youngster Wei, stop sucking up. Wang Chong burst into laughter. Just as he was about to ask Wei Hao to restrain himself, he suddenly heard a gasp. Wang Chong's heart skipped a beat. He lifted his head and realized that the gazes of the crowd had changed. It was completely different from before. Even Gao Fei looked at him with fear and awe in his eyes, which was completely different from before. Wang Chong frowned. He was a little surprised, unable to understand why such a change would occur. Why are you so surprised? You are a famous person in the capital now. Wei Hao lowered his voice and chuckled beside Wang Chong's ears. Yao Feng is such a proud and aloof person. He is known as one of the 8 talents of the younger generation in the capital. Ordinary people wouldn't even bother to look him in the eye. Even we have to respectfully call him young Master Yao. But such an unparalleled figure was actually beaten up by you. Old Master Yao even reported it to the Holy Emperor. This matter caused quite a stir in the capital. There wasn't a single descendant of an aristocratic family who didn't know about it. Everyone is filled with admiration for you. Now everyone is saying that you are a dormant tiger. You are much stronger than that Yao Feng. Wei Hao patted Wang Chong's shoulder and said proudly. He didn't know what tiger or leopard was. He only knew that this was his good brother. If his good brother was famous, it meant that he was famous. Ha ha ha. Wang Chong was truly astonished. Previously, when he was with cousin Wang Zhuyan, Wang Chong was still thinking of how he could cooperate with her to remove the negative influence on the upper echelons of the Tang dynasty. He didn't expect to reap such unexpected rewards from these scions. Feeling the respectful and admiring gazes from the surroundings, Wang Chong suddenly realized that the benefits that the vast crane pavilion had brought him weren't as simple as what he had gained from his clan. There were many scions in the Tang dynasty, and all of them were proud and wouldn't submit to others easily. Chapter 26. Let's not spout nonsense here first. I have something to talk to you about. Let's find a place to sit down. Wang Chong patted Wei Hao's shoulders and said, "All right, wait for me here." Seeing Wang Chong being so serious, Wei Hao retracted his smile. He grew up together with Wang Chong, and he knew that Wang Chong wouldn't ask for help easily. Furthermore, he didn't like coming to the Eight Gods Pavilion. There must be a reason for him to appear here. Gao Fei, not a single cent less will be given to me. Hand it over obediently, or else you can forget about living in the capital in the future. Wei Hao tossed a bag over and pulled Wang Chong away. The scions of the prestigious clans in the Eight Gods Pavilion were reputable individuals. If they were to go back on their words, it would be embarrassing for them. Wei Hao wasn't afraid that they would go back on their words. "Right, Wang Chong, can I talk to you about something?" Wei Hao suddenly said. "What?" Wang Chong turned around and asked in astonishment. "Can you not call me youngster Wei in front of so many people?" Wei Hao lowered his voice and revealed a bitter expression. Upon seeing this, Wang Chong burst into laughter. "Brat. Don't even think about it." The Eight Gods Pavilion was bustling with activity. Wei Hao pulled Wang Chong to his seat and sat down. "Where did you go this morning?" "When I heard that you were out of your seclusion, I went to your house early in the morning, but your mother said that you weren't around. It sure isn't easy for me to meet you." Wei Hao was sweating profusely. He sat on his seat and drank a mouthful of the Western region pomegranate juice provided by the Eight Gods Pavilion. "I had something on in the morning, so I went out." Wang Chong faintly smiled. Hearing Wei Hao's complaints, Wang Chong felt a surge of warmth in his heart. Only those who had lost something would know how to cherish it. Only Wang Chong knew how precious this seemingly ordinary scene was. Wei Hao would never know that at this time in his past life, he had already fallen out with him. In his previous life, he had a very strange feeling towards this world. This included his parents, brothers, sisters, and of course Wei Hao. Back then, Wei Hao was Wang Chong's good brother, but he wasn't Wang Chong's. Especially during the 7 days he was in confinement. Wei Hao, the so-called good brother, didn't even look at him. What kind of good brother was this? Good friends? Good brothers? Even fair-weather friends would be better than this, right? From then on, Wang Chong completely broke off with him. She never saw him again. Only a very long time later did Wang Chong realize that while he was grounded for 7 days, Wei Hao was grounded for 7 days due to his relationship with his family. At that time, Wei Hao's father forbade Wei Hao from interacting with him due to his poor reputation. However, Wei Hao, who had always been obedient, contradicted his father for her sake. This completely infuriated his father, and caused Wei Hao to be beaten up. During those 7 days he was actually lying in bed. However, Wei Hao never mentioned it in front of him, not even mentioning it. It was only until a long time later, when the great calamity came, that the two brothers who hadn't seen each other for a long time reunited. That was when Wang Chong found out about everything. At the same time, Wang Chong also knew that the mysterious person who had been helping him from behind the scenes after the Wang clan was no other than Wei Hao. Time reveals a man's heart. At the last moment of his life, Wang Chong finally knew what a true friend was, and what a true brother was. It was a pity that by the time Wang Chong came to his senses, it was already too late. The world had collapsed, and the heavenly continent no longer existed, let alone a mere Wei Hao. When Wei Hao finally died in front of him, Wang Chong couldn't help but cry. The biggest mistake he made in his life was to lose a true friend, a true brother. This was the pain in Wang Chong's heart, and also the regret of Wang Chong's life. Good brother. Don't worry, in this life, no matter what, I will never let you go. Wang Chong looked at the carefree Wei Hao, who seemed to know nothing, and thought. Speaking of which, you really caused a huge commotion with Yao Feng this time. It's a pity that fellow's martial arts are too powerful, and I'm not his match. Otherwise I would have gone with you. Speaking of which, Yao Feng is too much. To think that he would make use of Ma Zhou to deal with you. Wei Hao slammed the table and said angrily, I told you long ago that Ma Zhou is a bastard, a hooligan. He must have some ulterior motives for hanging out with you. Do you believe me now? I believe you, I believe you. Wang Chong smiled. Looking at his brother's grumbling face, he felt warmth in his heart. This wasn't the first time he had heard such grumbling, but the feeling this time around was different. It had been a long time since they last saw such an ordinary scene between the two brothers. Brother. Birds of a feather flock together. It's impossible for a cat and a rat to mix together. It's impossible for a fish to leave its habitat. And it's impossible for a bird to burrow underground like a worm. Nothing good will come out of the environment we were born in. Ma Zhou's matter is a good example. In the future, you shouldn't hang out with Ma Zhou and his gang anymore. Listen to me, come to the Eight Gods Pavilion more often in the future. Here we are all of the same background, and we are all going to inherit our family's business in the future. It will be beneficial for us to interact more and have some fun. Wei Hao rambled on and said earnestly. To his brothers, Wei Hao had always been someone who was willing to sacrifice himself for them. Due to Wang Chong's rebellious personality, he was getting closer and closer to Ma Zhou and his gang. Seeing this, Wei Hao felt anxious and worried about Wang Chong. This wasn't the first time Wei Hao had spoken to Wang Chong about Ma Zhou's matter. In Wei Hao's view, Wang Chong probably wouldn't listen to his words. However, Wang Chong's reaction this time around was out of his expectations. All right. Wang Chong spoke a single word decisively. All right. Wei Hao was stunned. His outstretched hand pointed at the air, and the long speech that was about to come out of his mouth suddenly stopped in its tracks. All right. That's it? Wei Hao widened his eyes, unable to react to the situation. He had told him so many times in the past, but it was useless. This time around he listened to him just once? How was this possible? Wei Hao blinked his eyes, unable to comprehend the situation. You won't hang out with Ma Zhou and his gang anymore? Will you come to the Eight Gods Pavilion with me more often? With a smile, Wang Chong nodded his head once more. Wei Hao blinked his eyes and for a moment, he was at a loss for words. Wang Chong, you're really different from before. Wei Hao assessed Wang Chong from head to toe in astonishment. The current Wang Chong was completely different from before. In the past, Wang Chong would never come to the Eight Gods Pavilion. It was even more impossible for him to listen to his advice. Furthermore, the current Wang Chong was calm and composed. His disposition was completely different from before, as though he was a completely different person. Ha ha ha, you finally thought it through. I'm truly happy for you. Wei Hao suddenly thought of something, and he patted Wang Chong's shoulder with a delighted expression. Wang Chong was framed by Ma Zhou and was locked up for 7 days. As the saying went, a fall into the pit, a gain in your wit. In Wei Hao's view, the reason why Wang Chong underwent such a drastic change was due to Ma Zhou. Wang Chong had truly come to his senses. There was nothing that could make Wei Hao happier than this. Wang Chong chuckled. He knew what Wei Hao was thinking, but Wang Chong wouldn't reveal the true reason. This time Wang Chong had another mission. It's about time. Wang Chong chuckled as he turned to look at a certain spot in the crowd. As though responding to Wang Chong's thoughts, a commotion broke out amidst the crowd. Before he could see anyone, an enigmatic voice could be heard before he could even see them. Yo, isn't this young Master Wang Chong? The voice was filled with sarcasm and mockery. The crowd parted, revealing a 15 to 16-year-old youth wearing a silver crown. He wore a white robe embroidered with cloud patterns and had a peach blossom fan in his hand. He strode over with his head held high, his face filled with disdain. A large group of people followed closely behind him, laughing and joking. Subai, what are you doing here? Upon seeing this person, Wei Hao's expression changed. He stood up abruptly and hostility could be seen in his eyes. We don't welcome you here. Scram. Wei Hao shot forward and stood in front of Wang Chong worriedly. Subai was the son of Duke of Su, and Duke of Su was close to the Yao clan. Wang Chong had just defended the Yao clan. This Subai probably didn't come with good intentions. Wei Hao, stop pretending. This isn't your home. Why can't I be here? Besides, did I say that I'm here to look for you? Wang Chong, don't you think so? As Subai spoke, his cold gaze fell on Wang Chong, who was standing behind Wei Hao. Wang Chong glanced at Gao Fei, who was standing behind Subai with his head lowered. He knew that Subai was brought here by Gao Fei. Since Gao Fei couldn't deal with Wei Hao and him, he brought Subai here as reinforcements. To put it more bluntly, Gao Fei was arranged by Subai to harm Wei Hao. Since Subai's plan failed, he couldn't help but find fault with Wang Chong. However, Wang Chong wasn't interested in bickering with him. Subai, you came at the right time. Lend me some money. Wang Chong raised his head to look at Subai and said calmly. The moment he said those words, the area within Tianzhong suddenly fell silent. The originally cheerful crowd looked at Wang Chong in shock. Even Wei Hao, who was standing in front of Wang Chong like the eagle protecting its chick, was stunned. Borrow money? Wang Chong wanted to borrow money from Subai? What was going on? Didn't Wang Chong know that he was the person Subai hated the most? Furthermore, given the relationship between the Su clan and the Yao clan, why would Subai lend him money? Ha ha ha. Wang Chong, are you insane? What makes you think that I would lend you money? After a moment of shock, Subai couldn't help but burst into laughter. Behind him, the crowd also couldn't help but burst into laughter. This lad must be insane. To think that the young master would lend him money. I think he's still awake from his morning nap. What nonsense are you spouting here? A group of people started jeering and mocking him. The heir of the Wang clan, Wang Chong, was borrowing money from the opposing Duke Su's heir? There was nothing more hilarious than this in the Eight Gods Pavilion today. This lad was too wishful thinking. Hearing the laughter around him, Wei Hao felt so awkward that he could die. Wang Chong, what are you doing? Even now, he still didn't think that Wang Chong was the real deal. Given the relationship between Subai and Wang Chong, it was impossible for Wang Chong to borrow money from him. 2% interest. A month. Calculated by the days. When the time comes, the principal and interest will be paid together. Wang Chong chuckled. Leaning back, he said these simple words. In an instant, the entire hall fell silent. Even the science from the other tables were attracted by Wang Chong's words. Their eyes widened in shock. SSSS. Gasps could be heard. Even Subai widened his eyes, as though he was seeing Wang Chong for the first time. Wang Chong's words were concise, but all science in the capital understood what he meant. 2% interest calculated by the days would be 60% interest in a month. 10 silver taels would become 16 silver taels. Wang Chong's interest was even crazier than loan sharks. Wang Chong, you're insane. Wei Hao's face suddenly warped. He turned around and grabbed Wang Chong's arm. His fingers were so nervous that they were almost digging into Wang Chong's flesh. If you lack money, you can just tell me. Why are you borrowing money from them? Chapter 27. Wang Chong shook his head and shot him a consoling gaze. He was never one to act rashly. Even though the interest of 2% was a hefty sum, as long as he was able to obtain the dealership of the Hyderabad Stone Expansion Mine, this amount was nothing. Subai, these words aren't just effective on you. It's the same for others as well. Anyone who wants to borrow money from me can do so. I can even write down a promissory note as proof. Wang Chong said calmly. His voice wasn't loud, but it was loud enough to be heard by everyone. In an instant, everyone's gazes turned subtle. Which one of the scions in the Eight Gods Pavilion didn't have an extraordinary background and wealth? These people had never worried about food and drink. However, no matter how wealthy their families were, no one would complain about having too much money. Furthermore, even though their families gave them a lot of money, their expenses were high as well. Take Wei Hao for example. Even though his family gave him a lot of money, he didn't have many silver taels left on him. Most of the time, he didn't even have enough money to spend. To think that the son of Duke Zhou would be so poor that he would come to the Eight Gods Pavilion to beg for money. Wang Chong, if you want money, you don't have to go through so much trouble. Take this silver tael as a reward from me. You don't have to return it. After the initial shock, Subai suddenly chuckled. With a flick of his wrist, he took out a silver tael and tossed it onto the round table before Wang Chong. 2% interest, calculated on a daily basis, would be 60% a month. Wang Chong's promise couldn't be considered small. However, Su Bai suddenly thought of something important. Duke Zhou's lineage was known for their incorruptibility, which was also known as poverty. For a son like Wang Chong, his monthly expenses were only a few silver taels. How much interest could these few silver taels generate? It was useless no matter how high Wang Chong's offer was. Since that was the case, he might as well be generous and give him a few silver taels. At the same time, he could make use of this opportunity to mock him. Unexpectedly, Wang Chong stretched out his index and middle fingers, and with a flick of his fingers, the silver ingot fell to the ground. Su Bai, this amount of silver isn't even enough to fill the gaps between my teeth. You'd better keep it for your own use. Wang Chong sneered disdainfully. Humph! If you think it's too little, I can give you another ingot. Su Bai sneered. With a flick of his wrist, another silver ingot landed on the table in front of Wang Chong. Wang Chong didn't even look at it. With a grin, he flicked his finger, sending the ingot of silver to the ground. Not enough, Wang Chong said calmly. That mocking gaze of his caused Su Bai's heart to clench in pain. Brat, don't be too greedy. I'm in a good mood today, that's why I reward you with 2 ingots of silver. How much silver do you want? 3 ingots? 4 ingots? Still not enough? Don't tell me you want 1 tael of gold? Do you think you can afford it with your monthly salary? Su Bai sneered. 1 tael of gold? Su Bai, looks like you're short of money as well. Since that's the case, there's no need for you to lend me any money. How about this, I'll lend you a few taels of gold to spend later on. Wang Chong snorted disdainfully. Those words made Su Bai's face darken, and he felt unwell all over. What do you mean by 1 tael of gold is short of money? Even if the scions of the nobility in the capital had an extraordinary background, their monthly allowance would only be a few ingots to a few gold taels. At most, they would only have around a dozen gold taels. Even the scions of the nobility wouldn't dare to disregard a tael of gold. Who does this bastard Wang Chong think he is? Lending me a few gold taels to spend? How infuriating. Alright, Su Bai, you thought that you were formidable, but it turns out that you're only SOSO. Since you're not strong enough, you should just stand to the side. Wang Chong stood up from his seat with his hands on the armrest. At the same time, he gestured for Su Bai to stand by the side. Everyone else listen up. 20% interest, calculated by the day, a month. This sentence is effective on everyone. I'll borrow as much as you have. As long as anyone lends me money, they will be able to receive a sizable income from me a month later. Wang Chong, are you serious about those words? A voice suddenly interjected. However, it didn't seem to notice that Su Bai's complexion had turned awful. Of course, Wang Chong said calmly. In the 8 Gods Pavilion, is there anyone who goes back on their words? But what if you can't pay up when the time comes? Another voice asked. Su Bai's complexion turned even more awful. What a joke. Even if I can't pay up, can't the Wang clan pay up? As long as they have my promissory note, do you think that they won't be able to get back a few gold taels? Wang Chong sneered arrogantly. The crowd burst into laughter. Indeed, the people in the 8 Gods Pavilion were either wealthy or respectable. Even though Wang Chong was unable to repay the debt, the Wang clan behind Wang Chong was still able to do so. As long as Duke Zhou of the Wang clan was around, the Wang clan would be an unshakable reputation. Alright, Wang Chong, you're the one who said it. Here are 2 gold taels, take it. A good-for-nothing from an aristocratic family stepped out from the crowd and delightedly placed 2 golden leaves on the table. He came from a wealthy background, but who would complain about having too much money? Borrowing Wang Chong's money for a month was a good opportunity for him to earn more. This is my gold taels. Wang Chong, remember to give me the promissory note. Su Bai was infuriated. Before he could fly into a rage, another scion stepped out and placed a few gold taels on Wang Chong's table. Then a third, a fourth. These bastards, aren't they going against Gongzi? The faces of the crowd beside Su Bai darkened. The actions of these scions was equivalent to slapping Su Bai's face. But for so many of them to lend money to Wang Chong at the same time, at this moment, even Su Bai didn't dare to stand out and stand against the crowd. Wang Chong, are you insane? What do you need so much money for? Wei Hao saw everything, and he whispered to Wang Chong anxiously. He was clear about Wang Chong's expenses, and he knew that he didn't need so much money. He couldn't understand why Wang Chong wanted to borrow so much money. Wei Hao, don't worry. I'm not fooling around. I didn't borrow this money to squander it, but for another purpose. You'll understand in a moment, Wang Chong said calmly. Borrowing the 4 treasures of the study from a scion beside him, Wang Chong hurriedly wrote out a promissory note. Upon seeing this promissory note, the crowd around Wang Chong increased. Wang Chong, I'll leave the money to you. Write one for me. Me too. Oh. A commotion broke out around Wang Chong. Upon seeing this sight, Su Bai's face darkened and he turned to leave. Gongzi, are we going to leave just like that? In the crowd, Gao Fei squeezed to Su Bai's side and asked indignantly. However, due to Wang Chong's interference in the duel, he had lost more than 10 gold taels. He was unwilling to let it go just like that. Leave? Humph, why should we leave? Su Bai halted his footsteps and turned to look at Wang Chong's direction. He sneered coldly. Didn't you hear what he said? 2% interest, calculated on a daily basis. Borrow as much as you have. Why should we leave when such an opportunity is presented to us? Then Gongzi means Gao Fei was confused. If they weren't leaving, what was Su Bai trying to do? Humph, doesn't this lad want to borrow money? Since that's the case, let's give him a big one. I would like to see how he is going to repay the interest of several hundred gold taels with his monthly allowance of a few silver taels. Look for Yao Gongzi now and tell him about this matter. You will know what to do when the time comes. Su Bai sneered coldly. Yes, Gongzi. I'll go now. Gao Fei's heart jolted. Understanding the situation, he rejoiced. Without another word, he quickly left. Disciples of prestigious clans like them didn't receive much money from their families. Usually it would be at least a few silver taels to a dozen gold taels. However, Yao Feng didn't have much. It wasn't a problem for him to borrow a few hundred gold taels. If Wang Chong still didn't come out a month later, this would be the best opportunity to deal with the Wang clan. Even if he couldn't deal with the Wang clan, this was also a good opportunity to earn money. To be able to earn several dozen gold taels in a month, why wouldn't he do such a good thing? The news that Yao Feng received was much faster than he had expected. What? That Wang Chong is borrowing money wantonly in the 8 Gods Pavilion? In a tavern not too far away from the 8 Gods Pavilion, Yao Feng's eyebrows were deeply knitted together. In the morning, he received news that Wang Chong had found 2 Buddhist men to play with. Now, the news that Wang Chong was in the 8 Gods Pavilion was completely contradictory. That's right, Gongzi. I saw it with my own eyes, there's no mistake. Gao Fei said respectfully. Fear could be seen on his face. Hearing Gao Fei's words, Yao Feng's frown deepened. Wait a moment. Without any hesitation, Yao Feng suddenly stood up and turned around. A few steps later, he lifted the curtain and entered the room. Father, should we investigate this matter? Could there be something fishy about it? Yao Feng bowed and recounted the news to his father, waiting for his father's instructions. On this matter, his father was the most concerned about Wang Chong. Yao Guangyi frowned and fell silent. Don't act recklessly on this matter for the time being. I will be heading to the borders today to deal the final blow to the Wang clan. Before this matter is settled, don't attract the attention of the Wang clan. Yao Guangyi buttoned up the last button on his collar and a scheming expression appeared on his face. However, you can pay close attention to this matter. Doesn't that lad want to borrow money? Just satisfy his request. Yes, I understand. Yao Feng lowered his head and replied. However, a hint of excitement could be seen in his eyes. He knew that his father was heading to the borders to deal a fatal blow to the Wang clan. After this matter, no one would remember the humiliation he had suffered in the vast crane pavilion. Take this money pouch and pass it to Su Bai. Walking out from the room, Yao Feng grabbed a heavy money pouch and threw it to Gao Fei. Yes, I'll do it now. Gao Fei grabbed the money pouch on the table and left excitedly. After leaving the room, he mounted his horse and galloped away. In the 8 Gods Pavilion, Wang Chong was currently extremely busy. Every time he received a sum of money, he would write down a piece of data. Money after money flew over from all directions, thus Wang Chong's IOU couldn't stop being written. 1 tael, 2 taels, 3 taels. The money that was thrown over varied from a few taels to a dozen or 20 taels. When everything was over and Wang Chong counted the money, he realized that there were more than 200 gold taels. Upon seeing this figure, even Wei Hao's expression changed. Even though he came from a wealthy family and loved to gamble, his monthly allowance was only 11 to 12 taels. To think that Wang Chong actually borrowed more than 200 gold taels from the Eight Gods Pavilion. Even for Wei Hao, this was not a small amount. Looking at Wang Chong, who was writing by the side, Wei Hao was stunned speechless. It's still not enough. Wang Chong furrowed his brow in worry. Even though 200 gold taels was a huge sum to the scions in the capital, it wasn't enough for Wang Chong. The Hyderabad ores were extremely valuable, and Wang Chong didn't expect to raise a sum of 90,000 gold taels from the scions in the Eight Gods Pavilion. Wang Chong only needed 5 to 600 gold taels to hire someone to forge, and inscribe a few basic Wuxia steel weapons for him. As long as he could forge a Wuxia steel weapon, Wang Chong would slowly accumulate enough money to purchase the 300 jun of Hyderabad ores. However, it was only 200 gold taels now. This was far from Wang Chong's expectations. Chapter 28. Peng. Just as Wang Chong was feeling anxious, a powerful hand reached out from the crowd, grabbing a heavy money pouch. Peng, the hand smashed the pouch heavily on the ground before Wang Chong. Wang Chong, you said it yourself. 2% interest, calculated on a daily basis. Is your word still valid? A cold voice sounded from above. Subai. Wang Chong lifted his head in astonishment. Seeing the familiar arrogant face, he couldn't help but chuckle. Of course it's valid. Subai, are you going to lend as well? Wang Chong, I have 1,500 gold taels here. Give me the promissory note and you can take it all. Remember, return me 2,400 gold taels a month later. Subai sneered coldly. Hearing this figure, the crowd couldn't help but exclaim in astonishment. 1,500 gold taels. This was an unimaginable sum of money. No one could have imagined that Subai would be able to gather so much money. Based on a monthly calculation, Subai would be able to earn 900 gold taels in a month. There had never been a scion who could earn so much money in a single month. With this sum of money, Subai would be able to live lavishly for a long period of time. Since you dare to lend it to me, why wouldn't I dare to accept it? Looking at the heavy money pouch before him, Wang Chong was overjoyed. It just so happened that he felt that he didn't have enough money, so Subai sent it over. With this 1,000 gold taels, he wouldn't be in such a tight spot anymore. He would be able to carry out his plans better. Shwa shwa shwa. Without waiting for Subai's reaction, Wang Chong lifted his brush, dipped it in ink, and swiftly wrote down a letter. Flicking the ink, he passed it over to Subai. Take it. If you lose it, I won't be able to return it. You don't have to worry about that. Subai smiled sinisterly. Stretching out his right hand, he snatched the promissory note from Wang Chong's hand. Wang Chong, I have something to say to you. Seeing Subai's gleeful smile, Wei Hao couldn't hold himself back anymore. He pulled Wang Chong forcefully and dragged him out of the room. Laughter could be heard from the pavilion. Looking down from above, Subai watched Wei Hao and the others leave with a cold sneer in his eyes. In the Eight Gods Pavilion, just as everyone was about to disperse after watching the show, Subai suddenly turned around. Wait! Subai's face darkened as he suddenly called out to everyone. The Eight Gods Pavilion abruptly fell silent, and doubtful gazes turned to look at Subai. While everyone was still perplexed, Subai suddenly reached into his robe and took out the pendant token. This is Yao Fenggongzi's token. Yao Gongzi had ordered that no one was to speak of what had happened in the Eight Gods Pavilion today. If anyone leaks this information, that person will become the enemy of Duke Yao's mansion, and at the same time, become the enemy of our Su family. Subai glared viciously at the crowd, his expression incomparably cold. Some of the dissatisfied disciples felt a chill in their hearts when they heard this. They couldn't help but shiver and quickly shut their mouths. The Yao clan's influence was monstrous and they were highly regarded by the king of Qi. Currently, they were at the peak of their power and no one in the capital dared to offend them. With the addition of the Su clan, no one dared to offend them. No one dared to disregard Subai's warning. Weird. Among the crowd, only Gao Fei was surprised. He had just returned from Yao Fenggongzi's residence, But Yao Feng didn't say such words. Lifting his head, Gao Fei was just about to say something when Su Bai glared at him viciously. He immediately understood what was going on and his heart shuddered. He hurriedly lowered his head, not daring to speak a word. Yao Feng had many people in the Eight Gods Pavilion, and the people he came into contact with were all scions of prestigious clans. He didn't consider this possibility, but Su Bai did. There were too many people in the Eight Gods Pavilion, and if the matter of Wang Chong borrowing money were to be leaked to the Wang clan, this show wouldn't be able to continue. If Wang Chong were to borrow money today, the Wang clan would return the money to them tomorrow. No one would be able to benefit from this, nor would they be able to use this to threaten the Wang clan. The promissory note that Wang Chong wrote was a powerful weapon against the Wang clan. How could Su Bai allow anything to go wrong? With the reputation of the Yao clan and Su clan, he would like to see who would dare to leak this matter out. Wang Chong, what are you trying to do by borrowing so much money? Walking out of the Eight Gods Pavilion and onto the streets, Wei Hao couldn't help but ask, 1,700 gold taels, 1,700 gold taels. Do you know that it will be a huge problem if you don't return it in a month's time? On the streets, Wei Hao stared at Wang Chong in panic. 1,700 gold taels might be a pie that fell from the heavens in the eyes of others, but in Wei Hao's eyes it was a hot potato. Just thinking about it made Wei Hao's head spin and his limbs go numb. Up till now, Wei Hao still couldn't understand why Wang Chong suddenly wanted to borrow such a huge sum of money. Wei Hao, don't panic. I know what I'm doing. Wang Chong smiled calmly. His expression was exceptionally calm, and that unique calmness caused Wei Hao to calm down. Even though he didn't know what Wang Chong was up to, Wei Hao suddenly believed that there was a reason for Wang Chong's actions. He wasn't acting recklessly. I won't hide it from you. I have a huge use for this sum of money. If I were to succeed, not only would it be beneficial to me, it would also be beneficial to our Tang dynasty. They had grown up together. So Wang Chong revealed the matter regarding Hyderabad to Wei Hao without hiding anything. Initially, Wei Hao was listening attentively, but at the end he couldn't help but exclaim in shock. What? 90,000 gold taels. Wei Hao stared at Wang Chong with widened eyes and shouted, Wang Chong, are you insane? How can you agree to such a deal? This is impossible. What kind of ore is worth 90,000 gold taels? Wei Hao's vision darkened, and he felt that he couldn't even stand straight anymore. He thought that 1,700 gold taels was more than enough, but he didn't expect an even greater calamity to follow. Wang Chong actually owed 90,000 gold taels to someone. Wei Hao felt as though his head was about to explode. Wei Hao, don't panic. I know what I'm doing, nothing will go wrong. Wang Chong said calmly, his voice as calm as usual. Wei Hao's reaction wasn't out of his expectations. For 14 to 15-year-old youths like them, anyone would have the same reaction when they heard of 90,000 gold taels. However, Wang Chong wasn't acting impulsively. If he wasn't certain that he could reap greater benefits from the Hyderabad ore, he wouldn't have done such a thing. Wei Hao, compared to what you're worried about, I need your help more now. Wang Chong said calmly. What is it? Wei Hao took a deep breath and calmed himself down. Tell me, what do you need me to do? As long as I can help you, I'll do my best to help you. I'll try my best to help you through this. Good brother. Wang Chong smiled faintly. As expected of his good brother who had grown up with him, he was indeed reliable at crucial moments. There are too many people here, let's go. Let's talk in the carriage. With Wang Chong in front and Wei Hao behind, the two of them entered the carriage by the side of the road. Wei Hao's eyebrows were tightly knitted together. He seemed to be considering how he should deal with the aftermath for Wang Chong. 90,000 gold taels wasn't a small sum, and it was an impossible task. Wei Hao didn't think that Wang Chong would be able to accomplish it. Thus Wei Hao tried to persuade Wang Chong once more. Wang Chong, can't you think of a way to cancel this deal? No. Wang Chong shook his head. It's impossible to cancel a deal recorded in the Court of Judicial Review, and he doesn't wish to do so either. Then what do you want me to do? Wei Hao asked. I need at least 12 skilled blacksmiths to help me refine ores and forge weapons. Your Wei clan has many connections, help me think of a way. Wang Chong said. The Wang clan didn't specialize in business, and in this aspect, the Duke of Wei residence was much better than the Wang clan. No problem, I'll do my best to help you. Wei Hao agreed without any hesitation. Even though he hadn't taken over the clan's business yet, finding a dozen skilled blacksmiths was a piece of cake for him. Good brother, I won't say too many words of gratitude. Wang Chong chuckled and he felt much more at ease. 90,000 gold taels wasn't a small sum. Finding a few blacksmiths to refine the ores and forge the Hyderabad ores into wood steel weapons was the best solution. Since the price of the Hyderabad ores wasn't high, as long as he forged a few wood steel weapons, he would be able to earn 90,000 gold taels for the 2 Buddhist blacksmiths. With Wei Hao's help, Wang Chong felt much more at ease. Seeing Wang Chong's expression, Wei Hao hesitated for a moment, and his heart was filled with worry. He knew what Wang Chong was thinking, but judging from Wang Chong's expression, it didn't seem like he would give up. Right now he could only try his best to help Wang Chong overcome this hurdle. Also, there's something I need to trouble you with, Wang Chong suddenly said. Oh, what is it? Wei Hao was surprised. Other than this, he didn't know what else Wang Chong needed his help with. I need you to help me look into a person named Zhang Munian, Wang Chong said. Zhang Munian? Wei Hao frowned. He hadn't heard of this name before, and it didn't seem to be very famous. He's an official of the royal court, so his rank shouldn't be too high. As long as you look through the list of officials in the royal court, you should be able to find his name. If you find him, inform me immediately. Wang Chong said. What do you need him for? Wei Hao asked curiously. Could it be that Wang Chong got acquainted with someone that he didn't know of? There's a matter that I need to trouble him with. This matter is extremely important, so you must keep it in mind. Wang Chong said solemnly. This matter was of great importance, so Wang Chong didn't want Wei Hao to know of it for the time being. All right then. My father would often bring some name lists from the Bureau of Personnel back home. As long as he's on it, I'll be able to find him. I'll inform you when the time comes. Wei Hao said helplessly. Good brother. I knew that you would agree to it. Wang Chong chuckled as he hammered Wei Hao's shoulder. What can I do? We're brothers after all. Wei Hao replied with a punch. However, when this punch landed on Wang Chong staggered. Seeing that Wang Chong nearly fell off his seat, Wei Hao was taken aback and hurriedly retracted his fist. Wang Chong, why is your strength so weak? Wei Hao was taken aback. He hurriedly supported Wang Chong. What do you mean weak? I've always been like this, you should know that. Wang Chong said. It's been a long time since we last met. Back then, when you guided me to deal with Gao Fei, I thought that your strength had soared. Wei Hao opened his eyes wide. Wang Chong was speechless. Although Wei Hao's talent wasn't high, he was very hardworking. In this aspect, Wang Chong couldn't compare to him. Wang Chong, you really should work harder. Forget it, let's not talk about this anymore. Leave the matter you asked me to do to you, I'll be leaving first. The carriage arrived. Wei Hao jumped down from the carriage. After Wei Hao left, Wang Chong didn't stay any longer. He took the 1,000 taels of gold and headed back home. Just as Wang Chong was returning home, 2 guests came to the white agate jewelry shop. Is this the place? On the bustling street, a figure in blue stared blankly at the white signboard above his head. That's right, the white agate jewelry shop. This is the place. The other person said with certainty. These 2 people had long beards that fluttered in the wind. They exuded a powerful aura with every movement they made. It was obvious that they came from an extraordinary background. These 2 Buddhist monks look ordinary. I didn't expect the iron ores on them to be so powerful. If it wasn't for the clan head unintentionally discovering the secrets of these samples, I'm afraid we would still be in the dark. That's right. Those 2 monks look ordinary, and they don't even know how to speak Central Plains Chinese. I didn't expect them to have such sharp ores on them. If our Zhang clan can obtain these ores, we will definitely be able to advance further. As the 2 of them spoke, they raised their palms and one of them revealed a piece of Hyderabad ore that looked exactly the same as the other one. This was just a sample. A month ago, a steward of the Zhang clan met these monks who were selling iron ores. Just like before, this steward asked for a few samples of iron ores and brought them back. These samples had been kept in the Zhang clan's warehouse for a long time, but no one had shown interest in them. It wasn't until the steward accidentally discovered a problem in the refining process and reported it to the clan head that they started to pay attention to it. No one expected that the steward of the Zhang clan would accidentally bring back such a valuable iron ore sample. The Zhang clan held a meeting that very night. The clan head even made an exception and directly sent these two elders to carry out this matter. Moreover, he made it clear that this matter must be done properly. Our Zhang clan isn't the only one who refines weapons and armors in the capital. The competition is very fierce. This Hyderabad ore is very special, and it might be able to change the current situation of our Zhang clan. The clan head has instructed us not to let the other clans know about this matter no matter what, and we must find a way to do it properly. The lanky middle-aged man in green said in a deep voice. Yes. The other person echoed and also nodded seriously. The Zhang clan's current situation was very bad, and they urgently needed an opportunity to get out of the current situation. This was also the reason why they personally came out. Turning around, the two snapped their fingers and waved to the people behind them. Gotcha! On the street, about 10 meters away from the two, the door of a carriage opened. From the carriage, a bald monk in his 30s or 40s with a pair of wide sleeves and a pair of wise eyes walked out. Amitabha! The bald monk looked around, loudly chanted the name of Buddha, and immediately walked toward the two middle-aged men in green. If anyone else were here at this moment, they would definitely be shocked. This person was none other than monk Hui Ming from the Jiantong Monastery in the outskirts of the city. There were very few people in the capital who knew Sanskrit, definitely not more than 5. And monk Hui Ming was one of them. The two Sindhi Buddhists only knew Sanskrit, and they didn't know the Han language of the Central Plains. This was the reason why the Zhang clan invited monk Hui Ming over, so as to facilitate communication and reach a deal. Master, this way. The two green-robed middle-aged men bowed respectfully. As soon as they finished speaking, the three of them entered the white agate jewelry shop. Even though they had made ample preparations, when the three of them entered the white agate jewelry shop and saw the two Buddhist men, the development of the situation far exceeded their expectations. What? The Hyderabad ore has already been bought? The two green-robed middle-aged men stared at the two Sindhi monks before them in shock. They couldn't believe their ears. How is this possible? The eyes of the second middle-aged man were filled with shock. The reason why they had made a low-profile trip this time was to reach a deal. The clan viewed this deal with great importance, and they were given great authority. Chapter 29. Amitabha. Yes, benefactors, the Hyderabad ore has indeed been bought by someone. Monk Hui Ming pressed his palms together and after confirming with the two Sindhi Buddhists once more, he said. The two of them stared at one another, unable to say a word. The Hyderabad ore was definitely not something that could sell well. These two Buddhist monks had been in the capital for several months now, but they hadn't been able to sell it. This had to do with their sales methods. The method they used to promote the Hyderabad ore wasn't right at all. Another reason was that the Hyderabad ore had just appeared, and there were very few people in the capital who could recognize it. Furthermore, these two Buddhist monks were very low profile and only knew how to speak Sanskrit. If one didn't know Sanskrit, it would be impossible to communicate with them. Thus, the Zhang clan was extremely confident in this transaction and didn't consider anything else. On their way here, they even thought of using this point to lower the price. But they didn't expect that the Hyderabad ore had already been sold. Where did you sell your Hyderabad ore to? The green-robed middle-aged man asked with a grave expression. Ask him if it was bought by a clan in the capital, the other middle-aged man said. The first reaction of the two was that the two Sindhi Buddhist monks were lying and were using this method to raise the price. Otherwise, it would have been bought by another blacksmith clan in the capital. If it was the former, they would just have to pay a little more. But if it was the latter, then they would be in trouble. No matter what, the two of them had to know which competitor was faster than them. Monk Hui Ming nodded his head, and immediately relayed the conversation of the two Sindhi Buddhist monks in Sanskrit. It's not a clan. It was bought by a 14 to 15-year-old child. After a while, Monk Hui Ming turned around and shook his head as he spoke to the two of them. A child? The two were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe their ears. A child? How could it be a child? This answer was even more shocking than when the two of them heard that the Hyderabad ore had been bought without any preparation at all. Master, did you translate it wrongly? The second green-robed middle-aged man said. Although he knew it was offensive, he couldn't care less at this time. The matter of the Hyderabad ore was not a small matter. The two of them could not believe that such an important thing had been bought by a child. Moreover, how could a child have such wealth? Their first reaction was to wonder if Monk Hui Ming's Sanskrit wasn't refined enough, and if he had made a mistake in the translation process, translating the name of an aristocratic family as a child. For a moment, Monk Hui Ming's expression turned extremely ugly. However, he still suppressed the unhappiness in his heart and continued to communicate with the two Buddhist monks. That's right. It was bought by a child. They said the kid was called Wang Chong. After a short moment, Monk Hui Ming spoke seriously once more. Wang Chong. The two of them felt agitated. This situation was completely out of their expectations. They had no impression of the name Wang Chong. There were so many 14 to 15-year-old children in the capital. How would they know which child it was? Tell them to be more specific. What does the child look like? The green-robed middle-aged man asked. In his heart, he still did not believe that the Hyderabad ore would be bought by a random child. This was too sudden. They said that the child was wearing green clothes and was about this tall. Monk Hui Ming carefully recounted the description of the two Buddhist monks. However, this only made the two of them more agitated and confused. There were too many children like this in the capital. Right, they said that the child is the descendant of Duke Zhou of the Tang dynasty. Monk Hui Ming finally revealed a useful piece of information. Duke Zhou? The two of them trembled, and a horrified expression appeared on their faces. What the hell? How did Duke Zhou get involved in this? In the Tang dynasty, everyone knew that Duke Zhou was incorruptible, and didn't come into contact with these business matters. How could this matter be related to Duke Zhou? Are you sure you didn't hear wrongly? The two of them widened their eyes. Absolutely. Monk Hui Ming was even more shocked than the two of them. The reason why he agreed to the Zhang clan's request was because he only needed to translate and communicate with them. However, he didn't expect that Duke Zhou would be involved in this matter. In the Tang dynasty, Duke Zhou was an influential figure, and there was almost no one who didn't know of him. Ask him what's going on here. Duke Zhou is a person of virtue and prestige, and I have never heard of him being interested in iron forging. How did he get involved in this matter? The two of them asked. This matter was too bizarre, and the two of them had to get to the bottom of it. Monk Hui Ming communicated with the two of them once more. They said that it wasn't Duke Zhou. It was Duke Zhou's grandson who took the initiative to look for him. In addition, they didn't sell the Hyderabad ore to him. Instead, they signed an agreement with him. As long as Duke Zhou's grandson is able to gather 90,000 gold taels and hand it over to him within a month, the agreement will come into effect. He will have the rights to dispose of the Hyderabad ore in the Central Plains. Monk Hui Ming revealed an extraordinary piece of news. 90,000 gold taels? The two of them widened their eyes in shock. They were at a loss for words. 90,000 gold taels was a massive sum that even the Zhang clan wouldn't be able to fork out in a short period of time. Yet, Duke Zhou's grandson actually dared to make such a huge bet. From their point of view, this was an impossible mission. But regardless, from Monk Hui Ming's words, the two of them still managed to obtain an important piece of information. In other words, the deal hasn't been completed yet. They haven't actually sold the Hyderabad ore yet? The two green-robed middle-aged men said. The two Sindhi Buddhists nodded their heads. Who? The two of them exhaled deeply. As long as the deal hadn't been completed, the matter wasn't set in stone. In other words, they still had a chance. After obtaining the address of the Wang family residence from the two Buddhist men, the two of them hurriedly left the white agate jewelry shop and boarded a carriage. That Wang Gongzi is truly formidable. Indeed, it seems like he has already expected this. At the door, the two Sindhi Buddhist men shook their heads in awe. Back then, when Wang Chong requested for the distribution rights and requested for it to be recorded in the Court of Judicial Review, the two of them didn't think much of it. But now they no longer dared to think so. It was precisely because of this small detail that Wang Chong had already eliminated his competitors. Now we just have to see if he can gather the 90,000 gold taels. The two of them said. 90,000 gold taels wasn't a small sum, but the two of them didn't have much of a choice. This wasn't just a test of Wang Chong's background and strength. It was also because Sinda couldn't afford to waste any more time. The two of them received news that starved corpses had appeared in Hyderabad. Let's hope that he can do it. Otherwise, we can only look for another buyer. The two of them thought. At this moment, the entrance of the Wang family residence was bustling with activity. At the center of the entrance, Madame Wang sat on a mahogany wooden armchair. All of the nannies, servants, and maids of the Wang family were lined up in a row. Everyone's eyes were filled with worry as they looked at the carriage that was slowly approaching. The young master disobeyed Madame's orders and went out early in the morning, causing Madame to be enraged. Thus, she moved the chair over and waited since noon. By now, she was already fuming with rage. Looking at her steeled face and her silence, even the nannies who had followed her for decades were frightened. Today, none of you are allowed to persuade him. Whoever dares to do so, I will beat them up as well and punish them according to the clan's rules. Madame Wang's voice sounded from the gaps between her teeth, and it echoed in the ears of all of the guards, nannies, servants, and maids. Everyone shuddered, not daring to say a single word. They looked at Wang Chong in the carriage with pity in their eyes. This unfilial son was too outrageous. The matter yesterday hadn't even settled down yet, and today, he went out to fool around. He only returned now. If she didn't deal with him now, who knew how much trouble he would bring to the clan in the future? This time Madame Wang had made up her mind. She couldn't allow him to do as he pleased anymore. Bring the stick over. Sitting on the chair, Madame Wang stretched out her right hand. One of the nannies gritted her teeth and passed a barbed stick over. Those who cultivate martial arts tend to have exceptionally strong bodies. This kind of stick was specially designed for members of the clan, and it was especially painful when struck on the body. Madame Wang held onto the stick silently. The atmosphere in front of the Wang family residence was frighteningly tense. In the carriage, Wang Chong felt his scalp go numb. He was shocked by the formation his mother, Zhao Shuhua, brought out. He had noticed the abnormality at the entrance of the Wang family residence from afar. Clearly, he had disobeyed his mother's orders and gone out in the morning, which had angered her. Gongzi, what do we do now? Shen Hai and Menglong also noticed the battle from afar, and they couldn't help but feel uneasy. Madame's enraged expression was truly frightening. The two of them had been to the battlefield before. Through water, fire, mountains of corpses, and seas of blood, they didn't even frown. But before this, Madame, they subconsciously felt fearful and guilty. Don't be afraid. I will deal with it later, Wang Chong said. He patted the shoulders of the two of them confidently. But in his heart, Wang Chong wasn't too confident either. After enjoying the limelight outside for a period of time, trouble had arrived. Mother! Wang Chong walked out of the carriage with goosebumps all over his body. With an ice-cold face, his mother looked extremely frightening. Shen Hai and Menglong, aren't you two coming over? Madame Wang's face was cold and she ignored Wang Chong. Madame! Shen Hai and Menglong walked over anxiously and kneeled before Madame Wang. Madame had instructed them to guard young Master Chong. But not only did they fail to do so, they even went out with young Master Chong. The rage in Madame's heart was unimaginable. Don't the two of you have anything to say? Madame Wang's face was cold. She trusted the two of them deeply. Thus, when she heard that the two of them let Wang Chong out of the residence, she felt even more furious. We have failed in our duties, Madame, please punish us. Kneeling on the floor, the two of them lowered their heads and didn't argue. There was no doubt that they had failed to live up to the expectations of her ladyship. Good. The two of you have only known third young master for a few days, and you have already colluded with him. Very well. Punish them according to my clan's laws. Madame Wang said coldly. She was infuriated as well. Just by guarding Wang Chong for a day, the attitude of the two of them changed completely. They were completely uncooperative and this infuriated Madame Wang. Wait a moment. Upon hearing that Shen Hai and Menglong were to be punished, Wang Chong's face darkened. Mother, this matter started because of me. If you want to punish someone, punish me. This has nothing to do with Shen Hai and Menglong. Wang Chong's knees caved in and he kneeled respectfully on the floor. Wang Chong didn't wish to implicate Shen Hai and Menglong in this matter. Good. You have learned to protect one another so quickly. If I didn't speak of this matter, do you think that you can escape? Madame Wang said coldly. Nothing can be accomplished without rules and regulations. Mrs. Wang was also shocked by what happened yesterday. Before the matter of him kidnapping a female commoner was over, Wang Chong had already caused a huge ruckus in the vast crane pavilion, and even the emperor was informed of it. And now Wang Chong hadn't learned his lesson. Early in the morning, even though the weather was still fine, he abducted 2 loyal guards of the residence out of the residence. His actions were extremely secretive and no one knew what he was up to. Madame Wang was also afraid. Chapter 30. Men, bring third young master, Shun Hai, and Meng Long to White Tiger Hall and punish them according to the clan rules. After saying those words, Madame Wang stood up abruptly. Wang Chong's expression turned cold. Shun Hai and Meng Long's faces immediately darkened as well. The Wang clan was a family of generals and the clan rules weren't limited to kneeling on a washboard. Even a tough man would lose a layer of skin after coming out of the torture inside. It was rare for the Wang clan to resort to the clan rules, but judging from Madame's expression, she was probably serious this time. The two of them weren't afraid of the clan rules. They reaped what they sowed, but young Master Chong might not be able to tolerate it. Madam, there's no need to say anything. Just as the two of them were about to plead for Wang Chong, Madame Wang interrupted them. She hardened her heart and made up her mind. This time she could not be soft-hearted and had to teach Wang Chong a lesson. Only in this way would he remember it deeply, and in the future he would know to think more before doing things and not worry too much. For this goal, she even dragged Shun Hai and Meng Long into the matter. I've already decided on this matter. Why aren't you all making a move? Madame Wang hardened her heart and glared at the guards around her. The guards swiftly stepped forward to restrain Wang Chong, Shun Hai and Meng Long. Just as the clan rules were about to be meted out at this moment, Madame Wang, the King of Song has ordered me to deliver the reward. Suddenly a voice sounded. Not too far away, a luxurious carriage drove over. From the carriage, a middle-aged guard dressed in embroidered robes came down with a red sandalwood box in his hands. In an instant the entrance fell silent. Everyone, including Wang Chong, turned to look at the guard. Reward? Madame Wang's footsteps came to an abrupt halt. She turned around and astonishment appeared on her elegant face. My husband has already left the capital, and he didn't mention anything about a reward to me before he left. May I know why Lord the King of Song would bestow a reward upon him? Hehe, madam, you are mistaken. This reward isn't for Lord Wang. Instead, His Excellency the King of Song specially rewarded his son, Wang Chong. The middle-aged guard said with a smile. Buzz. In an instant countless gazes fell on Wang Chong, and they were filled with surprise. Even Madame Wang was dazed for a moment when she heard the answer. My lord, is there a mistake? The King of Song has only seen my son a few times. Why would he suddenly reward him? Madame Wang said anxiously. She was puzzled. The Song clan and the Wang clan had been friends for several generations, and their relationship was indeed very close. However, the Wang clan had many descendants, so it was impossible for the King of Song to pay attention to every single one of them. Moreover, the King of Song was very busy every day. Every year, he would only go to the old master's birthday to take a look. He would stay for a while and then leave quickly. In the Wang clan, only Wang Chong's father, eldest uncle, and youngest uncle had seen the King of Song a lot. At the very least, the other children rarely saw each other. The last time Wang Chong met the King of Song was 7 to 8 years ago. It was impossible for him to remember such a long time ago. Even if Wang Chong were to stand before the King of Song right now, he wouldn't be able to recognize him. Why would he suddenly reward him? Hehe, I'm not too sure about that. However, the King of Song did say that this item is for your son Wang Chong. The King of Song said that he thinks highly of your son. He also said that your son is talented and has great foresight. He will definitely have a bright future. The middle-aged guard turned to look at Wang Chong with admiration. Hua! As soon as he said that, the crowd was in an uproar. All the guards, nannies, servants, and maids looked at Wang Chong in surprise. Even Madame Wang turned her head and looked at Wang Chong in disbelief. She couldn't believe that this was what the King of Song said about her unfilial son, who was ignorant and incompetent. Madame Wang rarely interfered with the affairs of the court, but she knew that the King of Song didn't praise people easily. His evaluation of Wang Chong was extraordinary. Strange? Why would the King of Song remember me? Wang Chong was more curious than anyone else. He didn't remember doing anything worthy of the King of Song's praise. In fact, he hadn't even met the King of Song face to face. However, Wang Chong soon thought of something. Heavens! I'm afraid this matter has something to do with Lord Liu. Wang Chong smiled and immediately understood. His father had already left the capital. In the entire capital, the only person who could put in a good word for him beside the King of Song was probably Lord Liu. His performance in front of him was not in vain. Mother, I didn't go out this morning to fool around. As you saw, even the King of Song rewarded me. Wang Chong quickly stood up and said with a smile. This was a good opportunity. If he didn't know how to make use of it, he would have wasted the King of Song's painstaking effort. Madame Wang glared at Wang Chong. Although she didn't know what was going on, she couldn't punish Wang Chong in front of the King of Song's messenger. Hurry up and thank the King of Song. Madame Wang said coldly. Thank you, messenger. Wang Chong quickly stepped forward and bowed. I'll have to trouble you to thank the King of Song on my behalf. Young Master Chong is too polite. To the left and right, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Originally, everyone thought that the third young master wouldn't be able to escape this calamity. They didn't expect him to be saved by the King of Song. Wang Chong didn't fall into a daze. Making use of this rare opportunity, he quickly found an excuse, took the box and escaped. After returning to his room and closing the door, Wang Chong poured himself a cup of tea and drank it slowly. He exhaled deeply and his heart gradually calmed down. The envoy of the King of Song had already left. His mother had also returned home with her maids, servants, and nannies to rest. The entire Wang family residence had calmed down, and Wang Chong had the time to think about his future. His father's matter had been resolved, the funds for the Hyderabad ores project had been secured, and his childhood friend, Wei Hao, was helping out with the craftsmen. The purification and forging of the Wuxia steel weapons wasn't something that could be accomplished in a short period of time. Thus, he didn't have much to do for the time being. Now it's time for me to raise my strength, Wang Chong quietly said to himself as he took a sip of tea. In his last life, Wang Chong had deeply experienced that earth-shattering calamity, and he was keenly aware that this calamity was not something that could be resolved by a single person's martial prowess. An infuriated man can only take 10 steps, but the wrath of an emperor can flow blood for 1,000 li. Only by changing the entire central plains from top to bottom would he be able to deal with the calamity in the future. Thus, in this life, Wang Chong decided to walk the path of the upper echelons of the central plains. Only by changing his clan, as well as the fate of the entire empire, would he be able to fulfill his mission. Comparatively speaking, personal strength wasn't as important. However, this wasn't to say that personal strength wasn't important. In the future, if he wanted to squeeze into the upper echelons of the central plains and gain the authority to change the entire empire, he would have to possess extraordinary strength. In the central plains in the Tang dynasty, strength was everything. Furthermore, when he met Wei Hao today, Wei Hao was able to push him back with just a light push. This was a reminder to Wang Chong. Just like what Wei Hao said, perhaps it was time for him to put in some effort. To forge iron, one had to be strong. If he wasn't strong enough, everything would be for naught in the future. For the next few days, there's no need for me to head out. I'll just stay at home and cultivate. Wang Chong thought. The room was silent. After resting for a moment, Wang Chong turned his attention to the brocade box that the King of Song had sent over to him. I wonder what the King of Song has sent over to me? Wang Chong touched the brocade box in his embrace, and a hint of curiosity suddenly arose in his heart. The King of Song was a descendant of the Emperor of Heaven, a prince of the royal family. Such a person was particular about rewards and punishments, and he wouldn't reward others easily. However, if he did, he would reward others generously. This time, the gift that the King of Song had sent over to him probably wouldn't be light. Even though the Song and Wang clan had a 3-generation relationship, that was a matter between adults. It had nothing to do with children like them. This was the first time Wang Chong had received a gift from the King of Song. I should hurry up and open it to take a look. At this point, Wang Chong couldn't hold back his curiosity any longer. Placing the box on the table, Wang Chong locked the lock on the box, and gotcha, it opened. How fragrant! As soon as the brocade box was opened, Wang Chong smelled a thick and refreshing medicinal fragrance. He couldn't help but take a deep breath. It's an elixir. A thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind, and he was immediately overjoyed. From the thick medicinal fragrance, Wang Chong could also smell a thick smell of sulfur and lead dust. These two were the ingredients for refining elixirs. Without a doubt, the King of Song had given him an extremely precious elixir. Wang Chong opened the brocade box. Indeed, on the smooth golden silk at the bottom of the box, there was a round and heavy elixir that emitted a metallic luster. On the surface of this thumb-sized elixir, Wang Chong saw many fine and exquisite green talisman patterns. They were layered and gave off an extremely mysterious feeling. Body-tempering elixir. Wang Chong was overjoyed. The elixir that the King of Song had given him was a body-tempering pill that was hard to come by. This was an elixir used by beginner fighters to strengthen one's cultivation and raise one's cultivation. Wang Chong had long wanted to buy a body-tempering pill for himself, but it was a pity that the Wang clan was unable to afford it. Furthermore, pill alchemists were extremely rare, and they only served the royal family and royalty of the empire. Others, including the nobles, couldn't afford it. In fact, even these alchemists were rarely seen. They were elusive and secretive, and even nobles like the Wang clan would find it difficult to meet them. Wang Chong didn't expect that the King of Song would give him such a precious body-tempering pill. Great! With this elixir, I will be able to cultivate the dragon bone art. Looking at the elixir, a thought flashed across Wang Chong's mind, and he recalled a secret art. That secret art was extremely difficult to cultivate, and its effects were slow. Thus, Wang Chong didn't even think about it from the start. However, with this body-tempering pill, everything was different. In the hands of others, this body-tempering pill would at most raise the quality of their body, making it stronger. However, Wang Chong was able to bring out its full potential. Furthermore, this would be helpful for him when he joins the Kunwu training camp in the future. Looks like I'll have to get the gatekeeper to prepare some medicinal herbs tomorrow, Wang Chong thought. The pill Dao of this spacetime was extremely unique. It contained a large amount of lead, mercury, sulfur and metals. Elixirs made from these ingredients were lethal poison to ordinary people. Not only would consuming it not increase one's cultivation, it would even result in death. However, it was different for fighters. An appropriate amount of lead, mercury and sulfur could greatly strengthen a fighter's bones and tendons. This was also the uniqueness of the pill Dao. Wang Chong's cultivation was still insufficient. He had to use some medicinal herbs to neutralize the toxicity of the body-tempering pill before he could consume it. Pada! You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.